today at 12 o'clock. If we'll go ahead and get started. I know that some of the aldermen have places to be today. We're going to try to get out of here at 3 o'clock, no later than 3:30, more like 3. So if you would do kick it off so we can just jump right through this.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and Aldermen. This kicks off our budget season, so we will be working through the next several months of working on this budget. The first thing I want to say is I want to thank all of our city employees, our department heads, for all the great work they do to make this city run and operate smoothly. They have worked tirelessly over the last year, and during the pandemic, it has been a challenge with a lot of issues with that, but they continue to show up, do a great job for us, and make our citizens proud. One of the things in this budget that we are going to be looking at is a salary study. We have that is in process now. HR has been working through that, so we will be bringing that up during the budget process. We have seen an issue with competitiveness in the workplace, not just from neighboring municipalities, but from retail establishments and things like that, where their starting salaries are considerably higher than what we have. And so as part of that salary study, we're going to be looking at that and addressing this as well. One of the things that will come up during this budget season is ARP funds. We had a workshop on that several weeks ago. We're also mindful that this board has an election on May 17th. A new board will be seated at some point, either June or July, whatever is determined on that, based on any type of runoffs that occur. And so the budget that we will present is going to be a basic budget. There are some requests for additional employees and some capital things, but we do want to allow the opportunity for the incoming board to come up with their goals and objectives as we move forward over the next four years as well. So just to talk about the schedule for the budget, what we have right now today is our pre-budget retreat on February 21st. The final budget requests are due to finance during the first 2 weeks of March. Staff will be meeting with each of the department heads. They will present their budget recommendations. Then we'll spend the next month working on that budget, and the goal is to present the budget to the board in late April. We will have a public hearing on April 26th, and the goal is to adopt the budget on the May 10th meeting. So that gives you a general time frame of what we're working on.
Mr. Hughes, before we go any further, let's have a clerk call the roll for make sure we have a quorum. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bingle, here. Alderwoman Harris.
Present.
Alderman Astor.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Odom.
Here.
Would you join me in the pledge of allegiance to our flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Heavenly Father, would you give us today to do this and us do those days we please to you. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
So, Mayor, consistent goals we always see with the city is quality of life issues, streets, sidewalks, water, sewer, electrical, and public safety infrastructure as well. And so shortly, as we invite all of our department heads up, they're going to talk about the goals and objectives and some capital items that they are going to be recommending as we move forward in this budget. You're going to have an opportunity to ask any questions you like, and also share any goals that you would like for the department heads to look at as we move forward with this. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start with general administration. Okay, so on the governing board, general administration, there are no significant changes, but a couple of things that we are going to be looking at. We've got our elevator project that will be affecting next year's budget. The bids are supposed to be opened in, I think, Wednesday of next week, so we look forward to getting that. We'll be talking to the board probably the first meeting in March to discuss that. We've got some other infrastructure issues with City Hall, namely the City Hall stairs that we're going to also look at in this upcoming budget. And we're looking at a video security system for City Hall to cover the hallways and things like that. Legal, the city attorney has made a request for to increase the fees. This is normally done approximately every 2 years, and that fee increase is going to be based on the CPI for the calendar year, and so that's what you're seeing on the proposed. We have looked at our neighboring cities to see what the average cost has been for attorney services, and the city attorney's proposal is significantly less than what we see with our neighboring cities. Under elections, if the elections are again delayed and we do not occur or conclude by June 30th, $40,000 will be budgeted to cover associated costs. If a runoff does occur, then we will need to come back to the board to address that. And currently, this election is scheduled for May 17th.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been in touch with Melanie Ray to determine if we are a standalone or if we are with the county? Because right now, I guess the county and the city maps are good, so they can move forward. The other, Congress and those other seats are not, state seats are not.
Right.
So I'm just curious, do we have the full amount? Because if we're standalone, we would need $75,000 if they're, if we're part of something, it could be $5,000. So do we have enough in our budget to cover that, in our current budget?
We'll check it. Currently there is 40,000, so if that changes.
But understood that we could have to spend a whole lot more if we're a standalone. I'm not sure. I've been curious about that, and I think we need to contact them and find out how that's going to work.
Okay. So for information technology, for the capital request, we have some items that are coming to their end of life, namely the backup system, core switch, wireless network, and we're looking at about $160,000 that we're going to have to replace. For operations, we anticipate a $59,000 increase, mainly due to the increased cost of maintenance contracts. On the PEG channel, we're looking at exploring the city podcast as another means of getting information to our citizens, and looking at a mass notification system to where we can send out voicemails, text, and emails, and also where citizens could either go to our website and check on specific topics, whether it be to be alerted of a Board of Aldermen meeting or any of our Board of Commission meetings, updates on Parks and Recreation or Public Works or anything like that. So it could be a a la carte thing where anything that the city wants to put out, you can check on that, or if you're just interested in specific things, you can request that as well.
Foster, in regards to the podcast, who would be in charge of this and who would be on it?
That would be a city podcast to talk about city items. So it's not anything that we would invite outside groups to come in and talk. This would just be to talk about city activities. And so we've seen success. A great example is we've seen the success that the city of Fayetteville has done, and we liked how they've operated their podcast, and it's just another way to get the word out to the citizens. And just preliminary looking at if we fund this and Colleen's doing some research on it now. Not a lot of cost associated with it, but we're looking at a couple of podcasts a month, and then if we have any situation such as Baker Street closure or anything like that, we can pop something out quickly as well. So it's just another way to get the word out. One of the things we're also looking at is the PEG channel. Currently, you can look at that on YouTube. You can also look at it on Suddenlink. We had an issue that occurred just before our last meeting. I've had conversations with the PIO officer, and we are putting some steps in place to where that doesn't occur again. So some components did break down on that. Moving forward, we are ready. If something happens, we'll at least be able to go live on Facebook with an alternative means. But also with Suddenlink and the way cable is, we realize that a lot of people are not subscribing to pay television like they were. And so we're looking at Roku platforms, Apple platforms to where you can actually download the city's PEG channel to where you can watch it on a variety of things. Still continue to do the YouTube and things like that, But great example is I don't have Southern Link, so I couldn't watch that city access channel unless I was looking on the website or something like that. So just giving an opportunity for citizens to look at things from a variety of platforms, I think that's would be a good thing to do, and it's just the future of what we're seeing with that type of communication. So also on the PEG channel, currently we are not transmitting in high definition. It is a considerable amount to upgrade. We have been talking about this for several years. The estimated cost for that is $80,000. We also do not have closed captioning, and that's an ADA item that we look at. That's a considerable amount for that. We'll continue to look at this. Our operating expenses for Swagit for the Facebook and live streaming is approximately $26,500. Some of the contracted programs that we do, we're looking at $6,000. And of course, if the closed caption is approved, then some of our line item expenses will increase to cover some of those costs. So with that being said, does anyone have any questions or anything on general administration?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
How many people do we have that contracts for us to go out and shoot events and things of that nature?
We have approximately half a dozen local subcontractors that we work with for video. We have 3 that I can think of off the top of my head for still photos. If we need those events.
Are they expensive? Are they cheap?
I think they're quite reasonable. I would like if we had more of them to choose from. Quite often they are busy with other projects. There are a lot of other businesses and organizations in this market that they also contract with.
Are we able to get a copy of those contracts, or who we're contracted out with that?
I'd be happy to share the companies. Yes, ma'am.
Because like the last event we had, National Night Out, a lot of people didn't know that it was going on, and in some areas wasn't even covered. And I was just curious how that taking place and how that happened like that.
First, I do have a question. I want to make sure I understood you correctly. So you're saying basically that some of our subscribers don't even have capabilities or something to get the TV3 channel?
They can get, suddenly can, but
Okay.
if you have other platforms, like if you're just getting internet service and don't have the TV subscription to it, unless you download something on like Apple or Roku, you're not going to have that opportunity to look at the PEG channel itself.
This is with the current changes that's coming about.
This is how it is currently right now.
Okay.
Yep.
Because my concern is with our elderly people, a lot of them are tuned in to TV3 because some of them don't have the capabilities of having a laptop or whatever, type of electronics they need to get to tune in. So
And that would not change at all. We would
Okay.
continue to offer that.
All right.
This is just a way to folks that are no longer subscribing to those services to allow them the opportunity to look at that as
all
well.
right, thank you.
So whatever we're currently doing, we do not want to stop on that.
All right, thanks so much.
Any other questions? All right, this time we're going to ask Amanda Olin Salem to talk about development services.
Right there.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Board of Aldermen. So today, we will be speaking about development services. Many of you are familiar, but for the public, just want to share that really the key purpose of the department is to maintain a high quality of life for the citizens of New Bern, as well as facilitate orderly planning and development throughout the city in the future, as well as administer the state building codes for any new or existing development projects. all at the same time while trying to maintain the community's history and charm, certainly. We have several divisions within development services, including community and economic development, the planning division, and as well as building inspections and the Metropolitan Planning Organization, or the New Bern area MPO. In regards to staffing, there are 21 full-time positions that are currently funded. 2 of the 18 are funded through grant funding through the MPO. So the MPO is a self-supporting division of development services. We currently have 3 vacancies in the department, a GIS technician position, which is one that was created last year. We also have the newly created executive director of the redevelopment commission, and then of course the director of development services position is currently vacant. We have added 1 additional staffing request, which would be administrative support for the community and economic development division that was previously requested during last year's budget process
Amanda,
and was unfunded.
what was the salary request on that one?
It is the salary range,
Talking about the additional support person.
yes. I'm sorry, I do have that.
And will they be working with the under the redevelopment executive director or overall development services?
It would be under the Community and Economic Development Division, so it would basically be under my purview.
Okay.
So it would be administrative support, just an admin.
Okay.
So I think it was an admin, like, first level position is what had been requested. I do have those here, so at the end I can look at that if there are any other questions.
Perfect.
In regards to department accomplishments over this current fiscal year, we have completed the resiliency and hazard mitigation plan. We are currently packaging that for final public comment to bring to the board for official adoption. We've also recently received information from North Carolina Emergency Management and FEMA. We had been previously notified of a grant award through FEMA to basically roll that plan into an amendment to the regionally adopted plan. So I just spoke with the state actually today, and they do expect that we will be receiving that grant application, and that will help us take next steps to roll those recommendations specifically for New Bern's jurisdiction in the regionally adopted plan, which covers 9 counties, related to recommendations to the flood hazard specifically. So that is something we have been working concurrently through this process to follow basically FEMA's recommendations. So I very much look forward to being able to have us publish that for the community to view the plan in its entirety. It has been a working document. We've been using it for applying for various different grant applications, including BRIC most recently. But we will have a prioritization of projects, which will also help assist us as we identify which projects we may go for other funding requests for federal funds, ARP, et cetera.
Well, Amanda, I just want to thank you and Mr. Jeffrey Zeri and you and your staff. Y'all have worked really hard on this resiliency and hazard mitigation plan, and thank you. I know you had a lot of work involved. Thank you very much.
And we are very appreciative to the public as well. It has been a lot of robust public engagement, a lot of engagement with stakeholders at the local, regional, and federal level, or academic partners. So, we have gotten really positive response from all of our stakeholders and how we can align our local goals with the regional goals. And of course, resiliency is one of the kind of the focus areas that the state and really nation is looking at right now. So we are ahead of the curve and able to share our best practices back with other local communities as well. So that has been a great success for the city and our department specifically. In addition, the New Bern area MPO completed the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is basically the long-range transportation plan. You'll remember that was adopted in March of 2021. In addition, the update to the Comprehensive Land Use Plan is underway currently. There is an update to North Carolina General Statutes 160D, and this will satisfy that requirement as well. And the MPO is also in the process of updating the city's bicycle and pedestrian plan. So I know the board has had a lot of discussion surrounding that topic as well. So that will be something that we can look at implementing into the future as well. I do share just some stats. This is more on the annual basis. So we're looking at the calendar year 2021. But Alice Wilson, our GIS manager, has completed the annual building report for development. And I will also share that this is available publicly on our website. So I'll go over some of the highlights, but you can certainly go online. There's a full PDF that you can print that has some really great data and stats, and I would encourage the public to do the same. This is out of order, I'm sorry, from what I had had. So as you all are aware, permits issued during Hurricane Florence really in 2018 and 2019 really kind of skewed some of our numbers, but did start to decline in 2020. The total estimated value of construction in 2021 was $102 million. Compared to 115 in 2020. That's due to some of the impacts of it slowing down following repairs of Hurricane Florence, and then also generally some of the availability of materials and what happened due to COVID-related shortages. So that's what we're seeing there. But you can see from this chart that residential growth has just far exceeded what we had seen in previous years. With residential growth having an estimated construction value of $75.5 million, and that's a 35% increase over calendar year 2020. Single-family home permits make up nearly 75% of the total estimated construction value. And we so basically the estimated construction value has remained pretty steady for the last 3 years, and we do expect probably a slight decrease in our permit revenues this year, just kind of based on some of the shortages in the construction industry and some of the challenges related to cost increases. So just want to make you aware of that, because that is in another portion of my presentation. Again, we issued 10 permits in 2021 for commercial development. This included, things such as medical offices, shops, even a new brew room. So pretty diverse in the types of businesses that we issued permits for. Additionally, in the last 6 months, we've had new site plan approvals for 2 medical offices, which total 6 buildings over both of those. One is in Carolina Colors, and the other is with CCHC. In addition, multifamily residential continues to grow. You can see here we have 360 new units that will go in Carolina Colors that have been approved. Highland Village has 60 new units, and then West New Bern, of course, has several plans for their multi-phased multifamily development.
Question there. There's a medical unit going up in West New Bern. Is that not in these talents? So Dr. Zanis's big project.
Right, correct. That one is under construction and nearing completion. So I didn't include that kind of as a
but
forecast.
He obviously has permits. It's not under. If you look at that previous list, there's no non-residential permits. It looks. If you'll go back, see, there's no red under 2021.
Right. So, and it could be, and
it's in the city limits, though, right? Is that not in the
correct?
City limits?
Yes.
Okay,
and,
I just wanted to make sure, but that's a pretty big building. And
it is, yes, and that's a great project, and that's a great instance of why I'd say go to this chart, and it actually lists by different type the amount of permits that were pulled and executed. And it could be that it was permitted in current fiscal year, just may not have been during calendar year 2021. I think that actually came through during 2020. So, this again, just based on the data we track is on a calendar year, not necessarily fiscal year. But moving forward, the site plan review, staff, we looked at kind of what's come through our office in the last 6 months. So these are things that are coming to fruition shortly. Will, if they haven't already started construction, will be starting construction and kind of thinking about what the future looks like for the fiscal year. So multifamily residential is a growth area that we just haven't experienced in this way, since, for a number of years. Single family residential, West New Bern, in addition to the phase 1 that they are underway, has been approved for phase 2, so that would be an additional 140 lots. Blue Water Rise has an additional approximate 150 lots. And then in regards to other industrial type of projects, we'll be working with White River Marine Group, division of Bass Pro, for their plant modernization. As you all are aware, we had the announcement of their manufacturing operations and the purchase of Hatteras yachts. So that will be something that we will be seeing over the next number of years as they bring more jobs and more investment to upgrading their plant. In regards to fiscal year 22-23 goals, we will implement the updated land use plan. We will continue to implement the redevelopment plan and continue to provide support for 8 boards and committees. I won't list all of those off, but if you have any questions about any of those boards, please let me know. And then on the budget outlook, as I mentioned previously, we anticipate a small decrease in permitting revenues. And one of the things that I will say that may be a little bit different, our budget will decrease a little bit because we won't be having the expense of the land use plan update. But we will have a slight increase. There's some hardware for GIS that is needed, some equipment, and then the GIS server reconfiguration, which will either be a dedicated server for GIS information or moving it to the cloud. So we've been researching those costs, and it could be up to $15,000. And I will be happy to answer any questions that you do have.
How many individuals do you have to do, inspect, is it
Nuisance abatement?
Yes, how many?
We have 2.
Okay.
We have one that works within the whole city, and then we have one individual that is targeted in the greater 5 Points, greater Duffyfield community area.
Because once we used to just have one individual doing that.
Correct. That was a new position during last fiscal year's budget and has had a lot of success in being able to help work with the community and have a lot of things that sort of just weren't moving or being corrected or improved that, really, since Mr. Holmes started Greg, he's done a tremendous job in building that relationship in the community and been able to have an approach where community members are, understanding and correcting issues, and that includes everything, including just removing junk cars, which is an issue that, staff had been working on for a number of years, and he was able to move a great number of those cars out of the community. So that's been a success.
Would be for Foster. When are we going to be posting that position for the director position?
That should be posted at some point next week. I'm working with the HR director now. We're updating the current one, and so that should be going out.
So staffing wise, the government services is pretty much on point.
Yes, yeah. There was one unfunded. We received 2 positions funded last year. GIS support for our GIS manager, Alice Wilson, and then also the additional nuisance abatement position. We did have the one unfunded request, which was additional admin support for the Community Economic Development Division.
So that's 3.
Right, one remained unfunded, so there is one new staffing member requested this year.
Okay. Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you, Amanda.
Thank you.
The next part, Kimberly Osterman with finance.
afternoon. The Finance Department, we have 10 full-time positions for the accounting division. Right now, we have an accounting manager position open, accounting technician position open, which that person starts at the end of February. And then an administrative assistant position is a temp position right now that'll get posted and hopefully get filled permanently in the next couple months. The purchasing and warehouse division has 4 full-time employees and they are 100% fully filled. So we have been busy this year. The fiscal year 2021 audit is complete and was presented to the board last month. It was submitted and accepted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse and the LGC. Implementation of Clockwise for electronic keeping system was fully implemented as of December. The fixed asset module conversion was completed with the 2021 audit. Our AR module was completed this past fall. The accounting division is now handling parking space rentals and privilege licenses. This is the first year that we've submitted our 1099s electronically. The finance department's monthly report has significantly improved. We went through a conversion with the online banking system. We've implemented debt book, which has been, the notes and loans section has been completed and is we're in the process of implementing the tracking and reporting of leases to comply with GASB 87.
Oh, Kim, question. When you say privilege license, you're just speaking of just beer and wine?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay.
I had that same question because I thought they went away.
Right. Okay.
So with the purchasing and warehouse division, they have been just as busy as well. We've implemented the contract module and we're continuing to work out some issues, but we plan to have that hopefully up and running before this next fiscal year. We've completed the physical inventory report or audit, and then in Munis we now have indicated minimum and maximums for all inventory items and have identified the critical spare inventory to forecast inventory needs for disaster events. And we're continuing to make efforts to work towards the supply chain issues with the department heads and suppliers. So the accounting division oversees $133.5 million. And this is just a snapshot of where those funds lie, with, of course, electric fund, general fund being the largest. Within that, I do want to say, within the annual funds, we include the operating and capital reserve and the special revenue funds as well. We manage 50 grants right now, and we have about $9.7 million in federal, $2.2 million in state, and $117,000 in local. We've outlined, or just kind of provide a little top 3 for each of those sections.
Kim, is the reason that the FEMA reimbursement is not listed because it's a reimbursement and not a grant? Is that why?
No, not necessarily. We pulled that one out because they are really the project funds. So this is just the grant awards that we've received other than FEMA. So the goals and initiatives for the finance department is we're definitely working on increasing communication. Fully staffed the department would be our first and foremost. Cross-training of all positions, which we've begun and we've made great progress with that, and we need to continue to do so. We want to continue to foster collaboration and teamwork, strengthen monthly and year-end processes to make a more seamless audit, complete and submit the audit on schedule, analyze and update our cost allocation plan, and continue to work throughout the closeout of various FEMA projects.
Hey Kim, let me ask you a question. How many closeouts do we have ready to submit now? Do you know?
I just signed one yesterday. The other one should be ready probably Monday now. And then I'm thinking we have the insurance reimbursements that we're working on to get aligned with several others so that we can close out those other small projects. So I can't give you a number, but I can find out at the end of the session.
Well, we're moving forward to closing out as many of them as we can.
Yes. We're hoping to have as many as we possibly can closed out for this fiscal year so that rolling into next fiscal year we'll have.
I understand that, but I also said this last year this time, and we need to close out as many of them as we can to get the money back in the bank because hurricane season is going to be approaching again soon, and it would be nice to have that money back into our general fund.
Exactly. Yep, that's our goal.
Well, Kim, I'm really glad to see part of your goals is cross-training of all positions. That's a plus.
Thank you. We've actually made great progress on that just this year as well. Additionally, we're working on our policies and procedures. In order to meet the compliance standards and processes must be documented and policies must be in place. So there's some that we, especially with ARPA, it's pushing a few to the top of the list. And we just really want to focus on updating and developing those policies and streamlining the processes. We want to increase our efficiency, strengthen our internal controls all around, and ensure compliance with federal, state, and local regulations, and of course the uniform grant guidance. Some other ones to mention, I like to mention are here. We've got the financial management and internal controls, cash management and investments, procurement, P-card, and contract management. And some of these we may have policies, but we just need to update them or look at the procedures. Asset management, pay policy, we've definitely made some headway on that. Inventory management, grant management, and of course the cost principles and allowable costs. That's related to the ARPA funds mostly. We got to get that up and going, and that should be to you probably the 1st of March, and the first meeting of March, and then the subaward and subrecipient as well. In fiscal year 23, we have no major changes planned budgetary-wise, and we are working on the RFP for the audit process, or the audit, because that is up this year.
Is there a cost involved in that you have to put into the budget, and or, you know, the way everything's gone up in price, you know, that they potentially, what we've paid in the past could be more? I mean, will you cover a range of that in your budget?
Yeah, we'll cover a range of that absolutely. Hopefully we'll have the numbers, you know, an estimate back before, you know, the final budget processes.
Kim, is our contract up with the auditor that we had present to us?
Yes.
Okay. So what are we doing about that?
That's the RFP. We're putting an RFP out there.
So when we do that, we'll be able to evaluate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
How many RFPs are going to send out?
Well, we'll put the RFP out on the web. We'll also probably list it, or on our website, and then list it with the a couple of the listers. We've been putting it out.
So
I've been seeing them.
So you're going to put 2 out? That's what I'm asking. How
Well,
many?
it's the same RFP. How many? Where are we putting it? Is that your question?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
you send out 1, you send out 2, you send out
Well, they
3.
send out one that
They go
goes
to
to
multiple
100
things.
people. Do you know what I'm saying? They put it in
Yeah.
one place, but it goes to many. Kim, if people contact you directly, do you send it to them, or do they have to go through these?
If they were to contact me directly, I would send them the link. Absolutely. Do you have any further questions?
Thank you, Kim, you're doing a great job.
Okay, next I'd like to ask Chief Boyd to come up. She's in there.
Boy, do I have some questions.
First of all, I want to thank the mayor and the board for allowing us to provide you vision and goals for the fire department, some current analysis of where we are, some data to be able to provide you, and hopefully the department needs. And I hope, you know, I say this with a humble heart, and that I hope that everyone understands how blessed we are to have such a great fire department. I know I'm very proud of the staff and the people that work there. And I promise you, it's not anything that Bobby Boyd's done. It's them that have done it. It's, you know, I like what Leggett said at the hospital, but that's pretty much spot on for our leadership, is to get the right people in the right places and get out of their way. And they'll do that job, and I'm very blessed to have a fire department that does that. So with that being said, I'd like to share some of the visions and goals for New Fire Rescue. We want to place a high priority on fire prevention. Fire prevention is number one. I always tell people that that's their number one job when they come into the fire department: rescue, emergency medical services, and fire suppression. We want to build, strengthen, improve, and advance the fire and rescue delivery system for the citizens of New Bern. And we also want to understand the importance of response times towards saving lives and property. As part of our 2022 and 2027 strategic initiatives that we're looking to implement, number one is employee wellness. We're finding out there's a lot of things that happen in firefighters, so we want to contribute to a safe environment for the employees of the New Bern Fire Rescue Department. We also want to work on structure and staffing to provide a quality service by establishing adequate staffing, training, personnel management, organizational development, and fire department structure. And as always, we want to align our recruitment practices better match the demographics of our community. Our community outreach, we want to continue to enhance community outreach programs to meet or exceed the community's expectations. And we want to, as part of our accreditation, one of the things that they told us was they wanted to work on our EMS program. So we want to formalize the fire department's EMS program. And we want to evaluate the EMS program for service delivery and what the customer expects. Communication is always number one thing that we need to make sure we're doing. So we want to create a culture of inclusion for internal and external stakeholders to benefit the community and the department. Current data. We did 1,693 inspections. We did investigated 41. We had 108 permits. We educated 4,712 adults and children. We installed 249 smoke alarms. We had over 23,000 training hours in 2021. We did the maintenance of flows over 14 hydrants. And our not spots, we perform maintenance of updated keys, and we're actually in the process of changing those over to an electronic keyway, which will be an even more secure system. And of course,
I'm sorry, you might want to explain, there's some people in here might not know exactly what a knock box is.
Basically, a Knox box is a device that sits on the side of the building. It has the keys of all the building, all the rooms and stuff like that. And inside of our fire trucks, we have a box that opens up electronically, and it records every time it gets open. It gives us a key and access to the keys. Basically, so like we ever have alarm activation, keeps us from breaking a door to be able to get inside and investigate. So it does saving people money. It took us a long time to get the program in place because people understand it costs money to put on it, but in the long run, it ends up saving them money.
And so you're saying, Chief Board, that like if I have a business and then that knock box is put in place so that you could enter my building?
That's correct, without having to break the door.
Okay.
But it's very secure. I mean, they, at least it used to be, that you had to ask dispatch to open it and it's recorded when that happens.
And it's even more so now with the new electronic keyways that we've got in place, exactly who did it, when it happened, and when it got put back. So it's all recorded and it's inside of the database. Incident data, we had 981 total response for our headquarters area. Number one was medical, followed by alarm activations, and the third top of the top three was hazmat and vehicle crashes at 18.3%. Thurner Road had 158 total responses. Top again was medical at 44.3%. Alarm activations followed that to 17.7%. And then hazmat, which excludes vehicle crashes, is 8.8. Elizabeth Avenue had a total of 885 calls. Our top again was medical at 29.1%, hazmat vehicles at 25.3%, alarm activations at 24.4%. I do want to bring your attention to this one just a little bit. Right now, Elizabeth is only 96 calls behind headquarters. In the past, headquarters has always been significantly above all the other fire stations. So that shows me as a fire chief, and we're looking at this as the area is growing because the number of calls are growing.
Chief, what if, in all three cases, looks like you're making medical calls, you're not making fire calls in essence, you know. I
But
mean, should we be more focused towards EMS than we are towards, I mean, fire is important, but your fire numbers are going down year over year, which means we're
That's a
doing a
good
good,
thing. That's
yes,
good.
no, I'm saying we're doing a good job in educating people are using the right building materials and smoke alarms and things like that. But should we be looking at changing our focus and how we look to the future in building and things that are we building more towards medical services? Because it looks like those are the calls that you're continually getting increases. Like,
But there's two factors there on the Bengal that you got to look at. Number one is what does the community expect? And when you do your surveys, one of the top things that if you look at, matter of fact, it's coming up before you, our new strategic plan, one of the largest things they expect out of the fire departments as a whole is to provide medical care. And you're talking about the golden hour of that first time, it's, you know, no desire to go in transport, no desire to get in any of that side of things. It's all about if we can make a difference in that first little bit of time, if somebody's having a heart attack. And if you look at our statistics, we're still way below what national statistics are. National statistics, 65 to 70% medical calls compared to everything else. And how that happens is a good collaboration that we have with the EMS out of the hospital. We meet regularly, we look at what type of calls we're going to respond to, the type of calls that we can make a difference on, and we do not go to anything else. So we only go automatically to echo calls. That means somebody's having respiratory issues or having a heart attack, where that time frame of somebody getting to them and getting CPR started is crucial. So basically,
are you taking a fire truck to those calls? So should we be looking at, when we talk about buying new fire trucks, should we be buying EMS cars, or should we, which would be a smaller, different kind of
the
unit? I'm just asking.
The mayor has brought that up on several occasions, and we actually practice the squad type situation when we have the storms. We put people on fast response, smaller vehicles with 2 people on there. But the problem is, you can do that, and that'd be great, and it would take wear and tear off the apparatus, but you're going to need additional people. It's not good practice to pull people off of an apparatus. So you've got 4 people on the apparatus that you're required to have by DOI. You're pulling 4 people or 2 people off of that, and now you have to respond with 2 vehicles if you were to have a vehicle fire. So the way around that in the future, if this is where you'd like for us to go, is put squads in place, which I'm supportive of. It'd be additional people to outfit those particular trucks.
I would actually support that. I mean, looking at the medical, it makes sense to have.
You see the trend I'm looking at.
Bringing 2, if it's 2 people, 2 people that we need to be bringing a vehicle, because you're saving the lifetime, depreciation on the apparatus. And within these 3, I mean, like she said, medical. So, I mean, I would definitely.
Medical is going to be number 1 in fire service. I mean, it's changed a lot over those years. I mean, when I first got hired, we didn't even think about doing medical calls.
I'm curious, in the same call, do you have it where you get 2 calls at the same time and you have to send basically 8 people out on it?
Yeah, but understanding, we're just in their preliminary. As soon as EMS gets there, we're finished.
Okay.
So it's not like we're there the entire time. Once EMS, we're just a support resource for them. It's basically making a difference, and it's only echo type calls. It's ones that we can make a difference on.
Can you tell me also, Chief, how many men we have that's trained in that?
Just about all we require now is everybody to be MTP.
So everybody.
We have some paramedics,
certified.
we have some advanced, but everybody is required to be MTP at this point.
Very good.
Thank you, Chief.
As you know, back in 2016, we adopted the NFPA 1710, so we track that. NFPA 1710 becomes our benchmark. And what I put in front of you here is kind of where our baseline benchmarks are. Those numbers at the bottom are our baselines, what we're trying to attain the benchmark of 1710. I have highlighted a few that have a few concerns, but with the positive side of things, call handling time has gone up 15% in those categories, thanks to the hard work of the fire department PD working together with the telecommunicators trying to improve that. But I also want to bring your attention to second due time in Thurman Road. We had 3 structure fires in Thurman Road area response district in 2021, and we made those 8-minute 0 times. And then Elizabeth Avenue, we're down at 62% of the 8-minute response time for second due. And again, that's just because of distance and traffic of the response times of getting there. And I've told you this before, there's things that we can make a difference in, and there's things we cannot make a difference in. And the things that we can make a difference in is call handling time and out the door time. Like I said, we work diligently with telecommunicators on trying to improve that, which you see there has been improvement since last year, so that's paying off. I will say this, and I'm not trying to push the police's budget for them, but one of the things that we know that is needed is an additional telecommunicators, because not only is our call volume going up, PD's call volume is going up, EMS's call volume is going up, and having enough telecommunicators in place to be able to handle the calls and focus on those calls is getting harder and harder. But we are making their efforts to. The second thing we can make a difference is the outdoor time. That's completely on us. We do pop drills periodically throughout the year, and time our personnel determines if they're getting out of the station in 80 seconds. Now, first do the second time, there's not a whole lot we can do. We have done some things to try to reduce the gaps, and I'll talk about them a little bit later, but it's all about distance and traffic, and that's what dictates that. So.
Well, Chief, I want to ask you a question. That's kind of fast, 80 seconds for out the door. So what the firemen do, put the gear on the inside the fire truck?
Well, they have to, yeah, that 80 seconds is from the time we get to dispatch until our wheels roll out the door.
Wow.
So they have 80 seconds to do that part. Wow. And we're hitting it pretty much. I mean, as you saw, we're in the 70% range. I mean, our goal is 90%. But we do pretty good with it, and some of that is because it's nighttime and they're upstairs, or it could be they're out in the backyard doing hose testing, and so there are other factors. But as a whole, we do meet pretty well.
Chief, what's the difference? The call handling time is all handled by the call center, right?
That's correct.
What's the difference in the percentages depending on the station that the call goes to?
I just separated them. So I just basically pulled those out.
Okay.
In reality, your mind thinks they all should be the same. Don't talk that way all the time. But when I pull this data, I pull it for that individual station so I can track what's happened at that station. So it comes out too. What I'm tracking is the outdoor time. That's what I'm paying attention to. I'm tracking the travel times and the first due time because that's what's significant. But it all comes out, so I included it at the same time.
So the 90, just so I understand, the 90 seconds, that's the goal.
That's correct.
So for the headquarters, 35% of the call handles are within 90 seconds?
That's correct.
What takes so long to handle a call?
I think a lot of it is we've got a lot of questions we've got to ask, and not having enough, and Chief may be able to explain further, but from what my observation has been, they are having to take all this data to determine what type of call it is and to know what to dispatch. If there was enough people in there, you could actually pass it off and say, go ahead and dispatch fire, and you can handle that while you're still continuing to ask the questions. But what's happening is now you're kind of having played two sides of that. And personnel is really the only way to get it perfect. But we have found ways, and I'll admit, it's been a great collaboration between us. Because if we say 15% a year, that's good. If we can continue to get 15%, maybe we can get there, but I think ultimately it's the number of people.
Well, I think, don't they have two, correct me if I'm mistaken, have two sitting in there at all times, and when one is taking it, the other one is dispatching at the same time, so they're not holding that call to get that information that you require.
Not necessarily holding it, but if you got a PD call and an EMS call going on at the same time, it's hard to pass it off. So you kind of got to get to a point. Yeah, ultimately that's what they try to do. But I mean, there is times where there might be a PD officer that's happening, a call happening. There might be an EMS call that's happening. Might be a fire call that's happening.
So in that case, the call taker has to also be the dispatcher?
Sometimes.
Well, that's.
Can we get an overlap report of two things? I'd like to see an overlap report on how many times multiple calls are being handled inside the call center. And then I'd like to see an overlap report on how many times a station has a company out on a call and you get a second call that's a fire call. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that.
Thank you.
I can pull that up for you.
Of the number of our calls, what's the majority of them for EMS, for dispatching EMS? Not fire department EMS, but the hospital. How many medical calls are we receiving, or what's the percentage of the medical calls that we receive where our top call takers have to dispatch EMS? Do we have that?
Well, inside the city, our call takers are going to be taking them all.
I understand, and that's a pretty busy agency, right?
That's correct. There are about 6,000 to 7,000 calls a week.
Okay. I reckon my question is pretty obvious. I mean, we reduced the number of telecommunicators over the years. We used to have, at one time, we had, I think, 3 and a supervisor, which was the 4th on duty at most of the time. Is that correct?
I can answer that. On most occasions, that is exactly what is in the radio room at this time. You'll see 3 telecommunicators and a supervisor.
Okay.
There are times based on extenuating circumstances, leave or sick leave or that type of thing, where we would have 2 telecommunicators and a supervisor. But generally, it's 3 and a supervisor.
Does EMS participate in the cost of our community, of dispatching? Do they share any portion of the call center, the dispatchers?
I'll have to get you an answer on that one. I'm not sure.
You said EMS, but the
The
hospital
hospital.
pays. So I know the hospital doesn't reimburse us, do they?
Alderman, I hate to ask you this, but would you mind if you would just send me a quick text or an email exactly what you want, so I make sure I get you the correct information?
I've got it for you.
Yeah. No, I mean, to my knowledge, I don't think hospital pays. My question would be, is what happens in other cities and 911 communication centers? Do typically EMS reimburse the call center? Is that
Well,
a
I
normal
think
standard?
typically all the agencies share the cost and there's one telecommunication center. You know, and typically I would think that would be the case, at least that's what it used to be.
But I want to make sure we understand that, we're doing everything we can through collaboration, and I'm seeing improvement, but, ultimately it boils down to the number of people being able to take the calls. Call volume is increasing. And like every place else, through attrition too, I mean, it's a very, one of the things we ask our personnel to do is go there and sit there and be a part of it, because it's a very stressful job. When we went through some of the training, I can only imagine this, how hard it would be listening on the phone and trying to cipher through everything. As you saw Amanda talked about, we do have commercial growth and residential growth in all of our response districts, and Alice was kind enough to kind of break it down, and for us to see we had about 13 new in headquarters, residential, 199 at Thurman, and 178 in Elizabeth, and then we had 5 commercial in headquarters, and some of those are reworks, not necessarily new commercial properties. Thurman we had 3, which a couple of them are very large, and then in Elizabeth we have additional 6 permits, so it's commercial. Again, thank you to Alice, again, providing us with an updated census population. I think this is the closest one. I've done these every year, but this is the closest one that I've ever been able to do. We're only about 415 above the average of the population, which puts us really right there where we need to be. When you look at that, we're still about 8 square miles above the average. The only one that's close is Monroe, which has got the same as ours. We're under 1 by number of fire stations. We're almost double that on the square miles covered per fire station, and we're about 700 full-time personnel, and we're almost half under the number of management day staff compared to the like cities.
Chief, just a question. How can other cities have more fire stations with less people?
That's the number of people they put on apparatus.
Isn't that state law though? Yeah, I thought it was required.
The law is you have to have 4 people in one apparatus as first due. That's the law. And see, the difference is whether or not you send 2, 3 apparatus to that same call. So.
I'm not sure I understood that, Chief. So if the question is by law, we have to have 4 out. So when you send the second out, the second crew out.
First due. We're just talking about first due apparatus.
Okay.
It has to be there in 4 minutes.
Okay.
With a
With
pumper.
4 people? Okay.
With a pumper and 4 people.
So 5 people. Oh, pumper is the truck.
That's correct. I'm sorry. So basically, if you could, you could reduce the number of personnel on that apparatus, but you'd have to send 2 apparatus to that same call.
I see. But on a shift, per shift, so you have 8 people per shift?
Now, we actually have 22.
per shift.
All right.
So you could potentially send,
But you gotta remember minimal staffing. Yeah, because people have to have their days off.
right,
And we have a minimal staffing of 18. So any given day, we have 18 people. A
per
firefighter.
shift.
Per shift. Moving on to the capital budget request. First thing is our SCBA. No longer NFPA compliant, and when we went to try to get them replaced, as we were trying to do so many a year, we found out the manufacturer no longer makes the SCBA. We have applied for a FEMA grant, and hopefully we'll know something that in the near future. If that doesn't occur, then we will be needed to put it into our capital equipment request. Our SCBA request compressor is required by OSHA to provide quality breathing for our SCBA, and the unit was purchased in 2003, and it's costing us somewhere around $4,000 annually, and it's been having to be repaired, and it's coming to the end of life, and it's very crucial to be able to have that to fill our SCBA bottles. Diesel exhaust removal system. Cancer has become the leading cause of death among firefighters. Firefighters have a 9% greater risk of being diagnosed with cancer and a 14% higher risk of dying from cancer. We're trying to be proactive and reduce cancer risk by installing a system that captures the harmful particulates and gases that we shouldn't be exposed to. According to NFPA 1500, they're required to prevent exposure to firefighters to exhaust. Fire engine refurbishment, that is all tied into a new fire station. That was just a refurbishment of one of our reserve apparatus, where we could do that and get another 10 years of life as a first due at half the cost of a new one. Storage building, we are in dire need. If anybody has been inside our fire stations, it's filled up to the gills and our parking lots are stacked. We're in dire need of a storage building to be able to put some of our stuff into. Wildland firefighting skid unit, we've been requesting this for a few years. The reason for that is because there are several residential properties that are being built within the wildland areas, and as part of our wildland interface areas, we would like to have purchased this because right now we depend on, I should say, on the North Carolina Forest Service to provide this unit to be able to get back into the wooded areas, and sometimes it can be up to an hour at a time. And basically all it is just a unit with a pump, water tank that sits on the back of the truck with a long hose that we can actually get in between where the spaces that the fire trucks can't get to. Pumper equipment replacement. This particular one is a 2007 model. It was flooded during Hurricane Florence. It was actually out of service for 3 months getting repaired. Insurance paid that, but we've had several problems with it since. Apparatus is 15 years old, with over 100,000 miles and 12,000 plus hours, and it's been a real concern about reliability during emergency.
Since insurance covered that, there's no way for us to claim that with FEMA?
Not now.
We could have that?
No. We went down that route, and we tried getting it totaled route, and it just didn't.
Well, no, as long as it's fully insured, FEMA would pay the deductible. That's about the extent of it. I'm not even sure if there was a deductible on that, so.
Yeah, but yeah, it ended up being several hundred thousand, about $100,000, but it didn't meet the criteria of being totaled.
And what kind of problems are you having with it?
It's mostly wiring type issues. And we
Still?
actually had a lot of it rewired, but we're still having issues with it down. Certain functions of the truck not working, basically in the ladder controls and things such as that. But you know, it's just hit and miss. It's just, but on top of that, I mean, it is 15 years old. It's got over 100,000 miles and got 12,000 hours, and that's kind of the reason that we're trying to look at properly replacing it.
Well, Chief or Kim, is this something that can be handled under the ARP funding for grants, state grants? Because I know they had a lot of grants out there for fire. So,
We won't qualify for any fire grants for apparatus.
even if it was flooded during a hurricane?
It also had insurance. The problem is just you can't fix salt water inside wiring. And to apply through the grant funds, like, what the heck's it called now?
Fire Ant Grant.
Fire Ant Grant. We have way too much money in reserve for them to even consider giving us a grant for something like that.
Okay, that's the question we had. Thank you, both of them.
Thank you. Next thing is our fire service vehicle. We got a 2006 F-250 that needs to be replaced. And our extrication equipment, right now we got hydraulic equipment that's about 15 years old, and now they got the new battery operated that we can carry them anywhere we want to. Before we had to lug out the extricate, the hydraulic pump and everything else. Now we just go right to the scene with the tool and pop the doors or cut whatever, the roof off, whatever we need to do. And last is a couple of projects that has been, most of you have seen before. Again, we've got need a temporary fire station in the Bern, Carolina Colors area, the proposed Interstate 42 construction, of course, coming up. But even with that, you saw the response times for the second due. We had 0 time of meeting to 8 minutes. But also DOI response criteria of 2.5 miles to closest ladder service, which is now in headquarters. Anytime you have 5 or more greater structures that are 35 feet or taller or needing 3,500 gallons per minute, you're required to have a ladder truck company in that area. And currently we have 13 structures meeting that criteria. As you saw in the previous slide, you've seen the growth in the property area. But also, just like anything else, just like we talked about telecommunications here, we continually to try to fill those gaps with opportunities. And one of those things, if you recall, we now have a mutual automatic aid with the volunteer departments that are around us that are on automatic dispatch anytime we have a structure fire in that way. And that is during the last year since we implemented that, we have responded to them 13 times. They have responded to us 11 times. And we also built run cards and response maps, so we don't ask for every department in the county to come. We have specific departments that will come to specific areas of the town. And part of that, what we're actually recommending is to build a climate control metal building to house the fire truck and to move our current modular unit that we have, our temporary modular unit we have at the training grounds out there to house fire and police, to give them a substation in the area too, and the addition of 6 firefighters to augment the 6 approved in 2018-19 budget. And then we have the fire station / police station in the west of the 43 corridor. Again, we've got, as most of you heard Amanda say, we've got a 4-story complex, we've got North Carolina DMV, you've got doctor's office, many home sites that are being built. Don't think we're ready yet to build the fire station. I think we'll still wait on the 43 corridor, but what we would like to do though is to start nailing down some things, or get Weyerhaeuser to commit, to start doing some plans, to start putting some infrastructure in place, so when the 43 corridor does occur, we're that farther ahead. So, and that kind of includes where we're at, unless you've got any questions for me.
How far out do you know, Chief, is that 43 corridor for being implemented?
Yeah, maybe, isn't it?
2028 now, but I think it's going to happen quicker. They're back doing appraisals, so they had stopped that. Now they're doing appraisals again. So they have the funding for the construction that comes out of one pot of money. The other pot of money for acquisition comes out of like their general fund. And we all know DOT was broke a couple years ago. They've got money now. They've got $1 billion or so in that fund. So I think that's why it'll get moved up.
I hope so, because there's a lot of new development coming out there. I mean, so, you're looking at a lot of residents going to be coming to that area. That's a dire need for over on that side of the river, not here on this side, the west side of New Bern.
Well, even in consideration though of Lake Tyler, every time I go by there, I'm just amazed at how many houses they're building. And when you think of that 43 connector would serve in that, just there, I can't imagine what your response time is trying to get out to that.
And that's why you're seeing our second due so far down, because it's having to go all the way from headquarters all the way out to 4355 and then all the way down 17 to Craven Forest. And but in the future, if we could have that station located there, you're going to have a 55+ mile an hour both ways and a 70 mile an hour coming into town, access into town. So response times, I think, could be down where they should be at that point in time.
So, Chief, how many telecommunicators that you think you need, which would also serve the police department and you as well, correct?
I think that'd be a police chief question, but all I can go is by my observations and knowing that it's crucial times. Sometimes the biggest thing is because of that criteria of things they've got to ask for, and being able to have somebody to hand that off to and say, hey, we're the full dispatch. Because one of the things I've always said to them, I'd rather send the cavalry and not worry about the time, because we can always turn trucks around. And so we've done some things, and that's helped a little bit. So now they're just going ahead and doing the dispatch, and they're going things. There's lots of other things that he would have to be able to answer. Whatever there's such things called automatic voice dispatch, where you can, you can put that into the system where all you got to do is hit a button, and it's like a robot type voice that comes over to.
It's good to hear you when you speak and when you make statements that you have our citizens at heart, and that's what's most important, our citizens, for is fire and police. So how many, Chief, do you think that we telecommunicators that you need on staff so that we have enough staff can handle these calls so that we can get the police or fire out when needed?
I would like to have at least 4 telecommunicators and a supervisor in that telecommunicating room at any given time. That's not an answer to your question. I will get you an answer to your question so that my statement matches with an actual number.
All right, thank you, sir, both of you, thank you.
And I think, can we look at the call volume? I think will give us a better picture of times of day, because you may have situations where it may be off situation where you may have 3 or 4 calls coming in at once, but if you start stacking personnel in there and 90% of the time they're not getting that volume of calls, then you have a waste of personnel in there.
Now, it's best to be safe than sorry. Like the chief said, I'd rather have the cavalry on staff to handle these calls when they do come in.
The best thing to do is combine the 911 communication centers. That way you don't have Havelock sitting there with 3 or 4, New Bern with 3 or 4. It should be combined. And I think the issue in the past, if my memory serves me correctly, everybody goes into that discussion and conversation thinking you're going to save money. That shouldn't be the reason you have the discussion. The discussion should be to improve our service level, knowing that we might not save money, but if you have all these people sitting in different places, when you bring them together, you're more efficient. So.
On the last rating that we had, what grade did we get for telecommunicators?
Actually, they did pretty good. The only thing they really got hammered on, if anything, was the number of personnel, but they actually improved in some other areas, so it kind of was a wash as a whole from the previous time.
Okay. And I'll just give the board a heads up on this. This SCBA that the fire department's using no longer meant self-contained breathing apparatus. It's the air tank they wear when they go in to fight fire.
Thank you.
It's their lifeline. And they're no longer repairable. The parts are no longer available. They're outdated. They quit manufacturing them. And if he doesn't receive, or if the city doesn't receive grant funds to purchase some of these SCBAs, then the city really just needs to be prepared to bite the bullet this year's budget and buy them. They've got to have them. How many do you have? Do you have any idea?
What's that?
SCBAs.
How many do we need?
How many do you have?
We have about 39.
Yeah.
How many do you need?
39.
What is the problem? The problem is that they're no longer serviceable. And this is a piece of equipment that the fireman breathes. This is how he breathes when he goes in to fight fire. So it's not like it's they're on the outside of the house and if it breaks, they can just keep on breathing.
In the past, what we've done is we've done like 8 or so a year. So it's not a big impact. But then when we found out the manufacturer was no longer making them a couple of years ago, we kind of got to find what do we do. So that we applied for a grant last year, it didn't come through. Then we applied again for this year. We actually hired a grant that has a real good percentage of getting grants, so we're feeling really comfortable and good about this one. We just hope that it comes through. So hopefully this one will come through.
What does something like that cost?
Oh, they're about $7 grand a piece.
70.
$7 grand per, about
7,000.
$7 grand for one unit. But I mean, it's their lifeblood going into the house. I mean, that's, but everything with the cancers and stuff like that are happening right now, everything. I mean, you're going to see eventually. Matter of fact, we do have 2 sets turn out here right now, of old set and new sets, so there's just a lot of changes.
So how are they going out with these now if they need to be?
They're still, it's like if one goes down, we do have spares. like our reserve apparatus keeping, so that way if we have to call in additional people, they can call on the truck. So we do have spares in place and we do have parts in place. But the problem is we're getting to that point, if we don't go ahead and make a decision, then we're going to have what you're asking.
So if it's a census and necessity, it's $273,000.
It's 300, the grant was for 300 some $1,000 because they did not allow us to put it on our second due.
So
Our reserve apparatus, so the $380,000 is what we need total.
So if you had $380,000 to replace them tomorrow, how soon can they be replaced?
I'd have to find that out with everything that's happening in today's climate, as far as getting packs and getting things purchased.
I mean, we don't have money in the fund balance to be able to allocate $380,000 so that our firefighters aren't getting canceled.
My recommendation is, I think we should see what the grant does, and then we might have to back up a fund at that point.
And if they don't, then this is something that we should automatically.
Is it possible they would partially fund it instead of 300? They give you 100.
Well, it's 300. It's a matching grant. That's what it is. So.
When should you know?
It was originally supposed to be in March, but they extended it, the deadline from December to January, so it could be April, May now. And it's all about rounds. You know, it's where you are in those rounds. And hopefully, I feel really good about this one. So we wrote the first one, it's kind of a learning curve, and we saw some things we needed to correct, and we got a new a grant writer, and it had a really good success rate.
So you had to find a grant writer for your department, or you use Margaret?
Yeah, we found a grant writer for this particular grant. That was an expert in this grant.
I'm all for whatever you need, especially for our firefighters. If you need it, I think we as a board should find some way to find some money for you if your grant don't come through.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, next up, Ms. Hayes with Human Resources.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of the board. I won't be before you very long. So as far as the Human Resources Department is concerned, you know, we're a very small department. We have 5 budgeted positions, and so I won't be requesting, of course, any capital or any new positions for this fiscal year. But I will be requesting additional monies as they relate to our other travel and training line and our temporary health services line, and I'll be explaining that to you a little bit more as we go forward through my presentation. So a few things I want to highlight for you today. One, I want to talk a little bit about our wellness program enhancements, employee training, temporary health services, and internships. So with that being said, let's get started. All right, so in January of 2022, as you know, we transitioned to a new health insurance third-party administrator, which is MedCost, a new flexible spending plan administrator, which is MedCost, a new prescription benefit management company, which is OptumRx, and also a new dental carrier, which is Delta Dental. So we've been extremely busy. And so what we're hoping is that this transition overall really will be beneficial to the city from a monetary perspective and also to our plan participants as well. So with this transition over to MedCost, I'm really excited about the opportunity for us to enhance some things related to our wellness program. And when we're thinking of wellness programs, we're thinking about, you know, what are the benefits? What do we want to gain from that as far as our workforce is concerned? And there are several things that we would hope to see from a bona fide wellness program. One is going to be a change in that employee health behavior. It's going to increase productivity. It's going to improve morale. It's going to improve employee engagement, reduce stress levels, and ultimately, hopefully, reduce healthcare costs. So again, a big part of my excitement comes from our partnership with MedCost and some of the things and the resources that they do have to offer. They do offer what they call a Healthy and Whole program, and that will give our employees access to quite a bit of information, resources, things through their online portal. And I'll just highlight just a few of those things real quick if I might. So one is an Active and Fit Direct fitness membership, and what that will do is it will give the plan participants access to over 9,000 participating fitness centers nationwide. Now that wouldn't be at minimal cost to the plan participant, but if they are into traveling, then they can just go wherever across the country and access these fitness centers. So that's very exciting. They also offer financial education resources, so on budgeting and saving and buying a home and just protecting your finances and more. There's quite a bit of information out there. My Care Path is another one that they offer, and that is a tool that the plan participants can use if they're having some issues. It helps them to evaluate symptoms, research medications, track activities, calculate fitness levels, and look at the risk that they may have associated for heart attacks and strokes. So good information for them. The complex case management is another one where there are nurse case managers out there standing ready to help, coordinating care for the plan participants, providing support when needed. This one I really was pleased to see, My Strength Mental Wellness, and that is a customized tool that will help the plan participants with managing stress and anxiety and insomnia, chronic pain, those types of things. So they will offer some personalized and confidential assistance and resources to help those plan participants. One of the other things that we're glad to see is that they also, meaning MedCost, offers a wellness calendar and communication materials as well. So we can utilize whatever they have in conjunction with what our wellness committee has created or some of the ideas that they bring forth. So I'll give you an example. So for February, we've done some messaging about Let's Get Heart Healthy. So on the 4th of February, we encouraged employees to wear red and to raise support and awareness regarding elimination of cardiovascular disease. We also, for the month of February, have a fitness bingo where we've sent out bingo cards to all the employees, and we're saying, okay, well listen, if you ride a bike, for 30 minutes, if you don't drink a sugary beverage for the day, or if you have no fast food for the day, X that bingo card out. And once you get bingo diagonally across, just whatever, you turn that card in, and then your name will go into a drawing for a $25 gift card. So we got some excitement that we've garnered for that. And on February 23rd, I'm proud to say that we are partnering with Craven County Health Department. We actually had a nutritionist who is going to do a virtual lunch and learn for our employees, whoever wants to participate, on healthy meal preparation. So we've got some things that we're doing in February, and we've got some things that we're looking forward to. As a matter of fact, the Wellness Committee met yesterday. They're talking about ideas for March, April, May, and so before I unveil those, we want to talk to the city manager just to let him know what it is that we're looking to do. So I'm really excited about those things that the Wellness Committee is doing. But in addition, they're going to continue to do the things that the employees find exciting, those team weight loss challenges, the Holiday Maintain It Challenge, the Project 640 challenge that we do during the month of July to encourage hydration. So those things will continue, but we're really excited about the other things that we'll have. Healthy employees, healthy workforce, better productivity, reduced healthcare costs. So again, we're looking forward to that. All right, the next thing I want to highlight for you is training. So we work with North Carolina Statewide Safety Conference, and our safety officer identifies by working with the departments OSHA mandated training that the employees really need from a safety perspective. So we work with the Statewide Safety Conference, and they come in and they facilitate monthly training for our employees who need it. So for instance, topics might range from just general safety to confined space awareness to heat stress, ladder safety, and the list goes on and on. So what we've done in the past, and we've been doing this for a couple of years, and it's gotten to be a little cumbersome when we try to identify which departments are going to participate in the training, how many employees are going to participate from each department, how do we divide that up, and who pays what. So what I really would like to do is just to incorporate that cost in the HR budget. So then we don't have to do that, but we can just make sure that the employers are getting the training. So I'm expecting that increase in the other travel and training will equate to about $7,500. But again, it is OSHA mandated training. Other safety-related training, again, our safety officer works with the departments to coordinate whatever is necessary. It may be asbestos awareness, chainsaw safety, bloodborne pathogen, those types of training. So he will facilitate the training as he can, or he will coordinate it if it's something outside of the scope of maybe what he feels comfortable doing. Video on demand libraries, we do have access to Core 360, which is at no cost to the city, and we also now have access to safetysourceonline.com, which is a free resource as well, through our workers' comp excess insurance carrier, and that is Midwest Insurance. So they have a large library. Our departments are taking advantage of that. Sometimes they will show these videos at their safety meetings or their tailgate meetings. For instance, they've done videos on tree felling safety, traffic control, workplace stress, ladder safety, cold stress, hypothermia. So again, that's at no cost, and we're taking advantage of those on-demand resources. Other training, one of the things that we definitely will be doing, we've identified that area that is going to be beneficial as far as training is concerned to our workforce, diversity, equity, and inclusion training. So the training will bring awareness to such topics as cultural competency, inclusivity, unconscious bias, anti-discrimination, effective communication, and a plethora of other things. So I'll be working with the city manager and the assistant city manager in identifying a company that can actually come in to do this training for us. And so I don't have a figure for you today, but I will tell you that based on whatever that figure is, that's going to be an additional increase in that travel and training, other travel and training line that I have.
So I just emailed you and him and CC Best to let you know the services from National League of Cities.
Great.
It's called the RAIL program, and they do all of this.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. All right, so that's it for training. Temporary help services. I don't know what to say about COVID. I just want to say we have been held hostage in the Human Resources Department by this COVID pandemic since the very beginning. Everything from developing policies to dealing with Craven County Health Department to webinars. We track every single employee who is out sick. We identify what the issues are, if it's COVID related. We do contact tracing. So that has really, it is a job that we really did not want. It was thrust upon us and we had to take it and roll with it. So I do want to say I'm so thankful that my department has just, we teamed up. Teamwork has been, prominent in what we're doing. They don't miss a beat. We try to keep things going operationally. Sometimes it's been all hands on deck when it comes to contact tracing. So I actually had to make a call and decide that I needed to bring in some temporary help to help us with some administrative tasks in the office while we were tasked with dealing with these COVID types of issues within our workforce. So back in September, I think that it was, I did bring in a temp. So I am going to overspend that line. Probably, I estimated we'll spend $10,000 to $12,000. Typically, I only ask for $5,000, but we needed some relief. So due to the uncertainty of what the pandemic might bring for the next fiscal year, I will be asking for $10,000 in that temporary help services line, just in case I do need a temp to come in and assist us again to take some administrative tasks off of our plate. And I won't use it unless I absolutely need it, of course, but I do want to ask for it so that it will be there. So as you can see, that increased request stems from COVID issues. And I wanted to look back and see, well, how much time have we really spent dealing with COVID-related issues? In 2020, my staff spent over 1,000 hours dealing with COVID-related issues. Now, that does not include time that my assistant director and I spend on the weekends and during holidays, receiving calls and contact tracing. And it's important because we want to make sure that our employees are safe. And if you know somebody's been exposed, I'm going to call you on a Saturday night. I'm going to call you on a Sunday afternoon if I get called. So, and then in 2021 as well, probably over 1,000 hours, just my staff alone. So you can tell, we've been, COVID has held us hostage, as you can see, based on those number of hours. And again, that's on the low end. So I don't know if we might be able to leverage some funds for some temporary services through ARP funding. Not really sure if we may be able to do that, but I will be requesting some additional resources.
In regards to the wellness program, you know, we have to include mental health. Are there, I don't, because I don't get into personnel, but if I'm working a full shift, do I just get lunch, or do I get like any type of break in between to step away from my work and take a breather? Do we have that within a standard position?
Yeah, employees can take breaks. I mean, of course, we wouldn't want to take multiple breaks, but if there's a break in the morning, break in the afternoon, because sometimes you do have to get away. Sometimes I have to just go to my car. Might not take a full lunch, but sometimes you have to get away. So, yes.
And so within these wellness programs, is there anything geared towards mental health, especially with COVID, just the stresses of employees dealing, like you said, with that, being able to, you know, step away outside of that?
Those are some of the things that we are wanting to do as far as training. Again, with the video on demand, there are some workplace stress videos out there for the employees to watch. But again, that is one of the things that I do want to work with MedCost on, to determine what can you provide us in the way of stress-related training, anxiety-type training. So those are things that I've got on the forefront. All right. Okay, if there are no other questions, then let's see, hold on. Okay, it wasn't a slide. But the last thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is internships. That is another area that we're going to be focusing on this coming fiscal year. So although we've employed interns for a few years now, we've had a number of interns, I really want to see us develop a more robust program as it relates to internships and opportunities to incorporate students from our local high schools and also from colleges and universities as well. So I'm really proud to say that we actually have an intern working at our water plant out at our lab. Just started this week, as a matter of fact, from New Bern High School. So I'm working closely with the CTE coordinator, one of them from Craven County Schools, to kind of, we're looking at expanding that, just to maybe get some students to come in to job shadow and do those internships with the city of New Bern. And what I'm hoping also is to, well, I've actually spoken to a couple of colleges and universities, and I've got some calls out there, just to work closely with them as well in trying to develop a program and a timeline so that we can get more college interns interested in doing internships for the city of New Bern. So working with the manager and the assistant city manager, going to try to enhance that program to make sure that we get those internships advertised appropriately and that we're reaching as far as we possibly can, making sure that we have a diverse population of interns. So we're going to be working definitely on enhancing our programs.
And that's what you're working with the high school. You said students from the high school are interning?
Yes.
The seniors?
Yes. Well, actually, this young lady, I think, is a junior, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm.
So do you, or have you had direct conversation with anybody on the school board?
No, I've only worked with the CTE coordinator from the high school who called me to say, hey, we've got this student. So I've not had any, gone as far as to have any conversation with the school board.
Yeah, because I think their Avid program, I think, you know, actually getting in there with your internship and explaining the opportunities, I think you'll probably definitely get a lot of students that would be interested in the internship program. I think that's amazing. Thank you for that hard work and wanting to expand that.
Okay. And I will say also, not just at the high school level, but I'm very excited because I've also worked with the CTE coordinator. We've been going to New Bern High School for the past few years, participating in the career days that they have. I mean, we take like 8, 9 departments, and we just kind of flood the place so they can see what do we do. You know, what happens with the city? What are the opportunities? So I'm very pleased to say that we are well represented at those career fairs. But I've spoken to her, and I thought, gosh, we really want to get in the middle schools and the elementary schools as well. So in March, the elementary students will be having a COW, which is Careers on Wheels. So we're going to be taking a street sweeper, a dump truck, a fire truck, a police vehicle, and I think, Jordan, we're going to be taking a back truck with a robotic camera. to show these little elementary students what we do. So it is my hope that they will remember that when they get to middle school. We'll be coordinating to do some things in the middle school as well. Then when they get to the high school, that may interest them in some internship opportunities. When they go to college, they'll remember New Bern, want to go back and do an internship, and hopefully, ultimately, employment with the city. So I've got some things in mind.
I think that's amazing. I think a grant could come out of that if we're able to spend money that way, where if they've gone through like at the elementary school, Trent Park, if you've been there from kindergarten to 5th grade and you have good grades, you have the opportunity when you're graduating out of 5th grade to be in the ability to get a grant of it's like $500 or whatever.
Right.
Or not grant, they win something, but I think that initiative is amazing. So I'm amazing. That really needs to be put out there.
Well, I'm excited about it. I think that by the time they get to high school, I know I can say for my son, they just want to leave the state. So I'm thinking to go to Kansas, yeah. So I'm just thinking, we got to start at the elementary school level, and so that they, at least, if they never come to work for the city of New Bern, it is my hope that when they flip the light switch, they will know it's not magic. There's something that goes on behind the scenes to make that happen. So just to get them in the posture of understanding what we do as local government.
Yeah, in the elementary school, it's true. It's very effective because when the fire department went to Trent Park, my daughter literally came home and she wants to be a firefighter.
Yeah.
And she says it all the time. So I'm like, okay, well, let's do it.
You'd be surprised at the interaction that the city have with the 4, 5, 6-year-olds. Because I remember, I can't remember what year it was, Charlie had a display out at West New Bern, and he had the little board up there that showed by electricity and all that.
Yeah.
And I had some kids at school, not at school, but at church say, did you see that? They was excited about it, so they remember stuff like that, So I don't know if you finished or not, but are you at a question point now?
I'm at a question point,
Okay.
yes, ma'am.
I want to know, and I talked with Foster, Alderman Harris and myself talked with Foster, it was during the summer sometimes. I want to see if we can implement and bring back the city employee picnic.
Okay.
I don't know how the rest of the board feels about that, but I think that would be really helpful to our employees, where they can get to mingle with one another, get to know one another. Because there's some employees I don't even know, and they approach me on the street and say certain things. I don't even know them, and they're our employees. And I just think it would boost the morale within the city as well. So I
Part of the wellness program.
Yes, and I just hope that other aldermen feel the same way about trying to bring that picnic back for this fiscal year coming up.
All right, we can certainly.
Because I do remember us getting a dollar amount on what it would cost, and I definitely think we can afford to, probably, especially with COVID, really couldn't do anything, but the amazing job that you guys are doing within the city to slowly spread and the work, it's needed, so I definitely agree.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
Just I'd like to ask Carrie Warren, Parks and Recreation.
It's just paper. No big deal.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Aldermen. So, New Bern Parks and Recreation. Our mission has remained the same from last year. Overall, kind of a synopsis, it is to provide enhanced quality of life for all citizens and the development of sustainable facilities, parks, programs, and services. And our vision is to provide recreation services for everyone. Our department is nationally accredited by CAPRA. That was first attained in 2015. We recently went through reaccreditation in 2020. We'll go through our next reaccreditation in 2025. Nationally, in the United States, there are 192 agencies that are accredited, and in North Carolina, we are one of 14. Our employee breakdown, we have a total of 30 full-time employees. For a majority of 2021, we were not fully staffed, and this has continued into 2022. And of course, we've experienced staff shortage due to COVID-19. We currently have about 5 vacancies that we're working on filling. That would include the director, special projects coordinator, 2 senior maintenance workers, and 1 parks maintenance specialist. Going on to major projects that we have completed in fiscal year 21-22. Of course, the Mark Marietta Park, we have just recently completed phase 1. These are a list of the different amenities and items that were completed in phase 1. And we are working on the process of planning and doing a grand opening. Additional major projects that we are working on, we're looking to install a new shelter over at Fort Totten Park, a bigger size shelter than the one that's already there. Glen Burnie Park, we have completed dock repairs on the dock that was damaged due to Hurricane Florence. And we also are going to be working on road and parking lot upgrades for Glen Burnie. Hopefully by March, we're going to have a basketball court developed at Henderson Park. We are currently working on the development of a community center out at Pleasant Hill Park. Just this week, we demoed the shelter that was there. Staff is getting that cleaned up and prepping the area for pouring of a pad for the structure that's going to be out there. And then at Southwest Parrot Park, we renovated the outdoor basketball court in 21. Other major projects, of course, we are starting on the development of Stanley White Recreation Center. We had our kickoff meeting with CPL. We are hoping to start working on infrastructure upgrades at Union Point Park. And we installed a new scoreboard in the West Newbern Recreation Center and a new storage building for storage outside of the West Newbern Recreation Center.
What's the infrastructure upgrades that we're looking at in Union Point Park?
That would be things like utilities, more electrical outlets for vendors, the water sewer issues that we have out there with flooding whenever the tide rises, increasing the accessibility with sidewalks. Some of the sidewalks in Union Point Park are not accessible, so that's some of the items.
What's the timeline on the Stanley White with the whole process? Where are we with that?
So the architect engineers, they're compiling information now. Once they have their program in place, they're going to have some estimated costs. That's when I'll be reaching out to each of the aldermen. We'll go over that to let you know how that goes. Then they're going to be making a presentation to the board to present what that cost is going to be, and then they'll continue on their process with continuing to pay the planning, and design, and engineering for the building. The goal is for that to be bid out at some point, probably mid to late summer.
And the cost of what they're going to come and present comes out of the money that's already allocated for Stanley White?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I will say on the infrastructure for Union Point Park, the biggest issue we've had at that park is we have a lot of special events that go on there, a lot of food trucks participate there, and the majority of those food trucks have to have generators on their vehicles. So if you're doing a concert or a movie in the park or something like that, hearing the generator running, it kind of takes away from whatever the event is. So we're working with utilities. They're going to be coming in and installing several different areas around there to where we can have 12 to 15 food trucks that can just plug in to a power receptacle, which will greatly help out that part.
So our department goals for fiscal year 23, of course, construction of Stanley Light Recreation Center, Henderson Park renovations to occur, extension of the Lawson Creek Marsh Walk to go by Jack's Island, working towards phase 2 of Martin Marietta Park, doing some environmental stewardship through urban forestry care and maintenance, Arbor Day and Earth Day promotion, outdoor and environmental education, and the installation of pollinator habitats. We would also like to continue with park system upgrades to include things like shelters, park amenities, overall accessibility, and of course the infrastructure. Also, we would like to work on expanding partnerships with nonprofits and other agencies. We could certainly benefit from, we've already partnered with the Arts Council, we partner with the county on some things, so expanding those would be ideal. Would like to increase our volunteer base, especially for big special events that we do and large park cleanups. And then lastly, staff training to increase number of employees with CDLs and additional staff to become a certified arborist to have on staff.
I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question. So like when we have special events and stuff like that, I know the employees are working those events. And like you say, in partnership with having bringing in more people. So just say for instance, with the Motor Fest. Now I know those employees get paid overtime, right? Okay.
That's correct.
Okay. So if you volunteer, if you were asking for an increase in volunteers, would that also make it, because I know some employees was talking about, having to work all of these events on Saturdays and stuff like that. So with those volunteers, would that kind of ease the time frame that employees would have to come out there and work those events?
Let me answer that, Carrie. So volunteers will greatly help out with like the administrative of events. So if we had inflatables and things like that out there, they could help man that. The problem is setting those inflatables up, setting up and tear down for the event. That's where we've got to have literally staff to do that. And it is taxing. Public Works, Parks and Recreation, they both are hit on a regular basis, whether it's a street closing or a big special event. And one thing that we're going to be looking at is trying to get some more part-time employees to help do this. We've tried to go the route of the temporary employee route, and we've had more issues than anything with that, with relying on temps to be able to do certain things that we need to have done, whether it be putting up an inflatable movie screen or making sure trash is picked up and things like that. And we are doing special events just about every weekend, really from right now all the way up through Christmas. And it is tough. It's tough on the Parks and Recreation staff because just like you saw in that list, let's just talk about the Parks and Grounds staff. There are basically 15 employees in there. So every day a Parks and Recreation employee is going around picking up trash in all those parks. On the weekend they're picking up the trash in the main part of downtown, cleaning the cup house and things like that. If there's a street closure, they've got to come back out in the evening. They go back through the parks every evening as well. And so is there a need for that? Sure. Do we like having those employees work every event? No. And I can say this as a city manager because I still go out there for every big special event and I'm working as well after I've already done my stuff. Same as Parks and Recreation Director and the other key staff. So we recognize there's an issue and so we're hoping to work.
Well, are you using Public Works to help assist y'all with some of this?
Public Works is involved in several.
Other than just putting out.
Yes.
Other than just putting out signs and putting the barricades and all of that, so they are helping you with. Okay.
Yes, they are. And the bad thing is, the great thing is that we're doing so many good events and citizens are coming out, but it is taxing on staff. We realize that.
So in regards to that, if I work an event on Saturday, am I getting relief during the week?
So, most cases, yes. It depends on what time of the year it is. If it's a busy time during the year, no. They're basically getting overtime. If they want to take off, they request that, the supervisors work that out.
Okay, and then in regards to staff training, is that a line item that's going to be implemented in regards to actual monetary money to go and get their CDLs? Like, is there an incentive? Like some places, corporations, you have an employee where you go and get your associate degree and they help you, give tuition reimbursement. So if I'm going to get my CDL, any costs that are associated, am I getting that reimbursed? Is the city paying for it? Do I have to stay here for 3 years to alleviate that cost? What is that?
So CDL programs changed. The city now does our own CDL program. So we've got staff in utilities, water resources, public works, and parks and recreation who will actually be teaching that. Once they've gone through the city class, then they're eligible to go to take their test and get permitted. So if they get that CDL, they will see an increase in their pay for that, because any CDL driver, they have to be drug tested on a regular basis, and they have more expectations, so they will be compensated for that.
And then what's going on with the Parks and Rec director position?
That position is getting ready to be advertised next month, starting in March.
Covered shelters at the cemeteries.
So you may remember back during the budget process last year, that was presented, and so no action was taken during this budget, and so I talked with the interim director, and that's one of the things we want to look at as well.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on any type improvements on that 75-foot strip of land where a bridge used to be, or a pier, dock, or anything?
Yes, we have looked at that, and I can also share with the board. I'll send one out, proposed layout of some additional parking and a potential for a fishing pier and things like that.
And where area are you speaking of?
This is right beside the Sudan lot.
Okay.
There, we've got approximately a 75-foot strip of land right there that we can look at for some improvements.
Foster, what about the columbariums? We had talked about that as well, because we don't have enough space in that.
Yeah, and that is included. I don't think Carrie's got to that. Yeah,
No, it's
that's
not
on her
on
next
that
slide. She
slide.
would have talked about that.
Okay, sorry.
In regards to the Henderson Park, when are those upgrades going to happen? Because, I know some people don't know, J1 to June 30th is the budget year, but we're actually, like this year, 2022, are going to do something.
That's correct. So what we're waiting on right now is the decision on the change in scope of work for the Henderson Park project. And so if that is accepted, what we would see is increased size of the playground with more amenities. The current fitness course that's over there, that's lived its life. So replacing that, having some more blacktop games beside the basketball court, where that's going to be on the foundation of the old Stanley White Recreation Center. We're talking about things such as hopscotch and Twister and Foursquare and things like that. Tearing down the old restrooms. We will be building new restrooms over there in this budget year. It also includes adding a shelter adjacent to where the old foundation was, which would double as a picnic shelter. It could also double as a farmer's market over there, and then just a gathering area for special events and activities for citizens or families.
Will there be shelter? Will there be basketball?
Yes.
But sheltered, so if it's raining?
That will not be sheltered. That's one of the things we looked at as part of the process for the change of scope of work. And the cost to put a shelter over that was quite extensive, so we couldn't do it that in scope because it was going to cost approximately $350,000 to $400,000. And we looked at putting a wood structure like we have with our current shelters, or doing a metal structure, and they were both significant costs. So, of course, we can always look at that as we move forward in the budget, and then look for grants for that.
And then in regards to where the park is now, that you said that lived its life, we know that we have that 80-unit facility there, and usually every single time that it is raining or heavy waters, that's real swampy. What are we doing in regards to that? ditch and that waterway that's running there, are we gonna be?
So I think that's going to be tied in with some of the plans that the Withers Avenue has been working on, and Public Works has been working on some things as well. So that is on the list. So I don't think we've gotten funding to actually do anything yet, but they have done some planning on that.
Okay, and can you email this to me so I have it in my records? Thank you.
One comment about the expand partnerships. I happened to be watching a county commissioners meeting a couple months ago, and they partnered with Havelock and gave them some money. They could always say no, but if you don't ask, we won't know. So
I will tell you that the county manager and I have had some discussions about some things, and we're looking forward to possibly doing something in this coming budget year.
because there's one thing to be sure, after this week, there's a lot of people outside of the city that use Union Point Park as an example, because I think we've got enough emails about that from people that don't live in the city that obviously are passionate about it. So.
All right, so capital items requested this year are only going to be for the Parks and Grounds Division. First one being equipment needs. That will be vibratory roller and box grader with an additional $10K for a construction trailer. Also vehicle replacement. The past 4 years we've been working on replacing our vehicle fleet, and we are almost to completion of that with the exception of a couple of vehicles. General park upgrades, which I discussed a while ago, are things like shelters, park amenities, increasing accessibility, new ball field scoreboards, and things such as that. And then the cemeteries, there are quite a few items we would like to see added. The addition of columbariums. They come in a variety from 24 to 300 niches, and cost on that can be anywhere from $4,000 to $40,000 for one of those single pieces. And then another addition are the chapel tents for graveside services. And then completion of the fencing at Greenwood Cemetery to finish all of that.
You talking about that black iron fencing?
Yes, ma'am. Would like to see some new park additions such as ADA kayak launch at Union Point Park. I've had a couple of people come by the office and email me wanting to know, they wanted to see a kayak launch at Union Point Park and something downtown on that side of the water. And then we'd also like to receive support to move forward with a skate park and working with partners to bring it to fruition.
Is that still scheduled to be at West Movement?
West Movement is there, yes.
So that's the desired
That's
spot.
We actually did a survey, it was approximately a year ago, and that ended up being the overall favorite because it was more centrally located in the town. Martin Marietta Park's a great location, but we saw that there were several big roads that kids would have to get through to get over there, and a lot of times when you see the skateboarders, they're just on their boards, and so it works out with that area.
Where over there
it would actually right beside Heath Ball Field. There's a wooded area between Heath and the gravel parking lot. So we would clear some trees out right there and install one. Okay. So the good thing about that is that we could do some upgrades to like the restroom infrastructure. So that would already be there. If there was any issues, Parks and Recreation staff is already over there at the West End Recreation Center as well.
And two, because I know that that park is used by people that necessarily don't live here, like when they do baseball. Are we not asking or trying to partner with them to upgrade that area? Because, they do over at Creekside, but once you age out and you're in the older, Babe Ruth, they're utilizing that park. So have we reached out or tried to partner?
We're having some conversations. Yes,
okay. And then with the security cameras, do we not already have cameras in parks?
We do not have them in all the parks. Now, I will tell you that we've still got several parks to go. We put them in, we put them in quite a few. We've still got Union Point, Lawson Creek, Pleasant Hill, Henderson Park once we get more of an electrical infrastructure back in place over there. But we have done several of the parks, and so it's going to be a multi-year process with that, but we are getting there. And also, all of the parks that are currently online, police have access to review those as well.
And has it been effective to anything that's going on in these parks?
You know, the good thing is we haven't had many issues in the park once we have put the cameras in place. And great example
One
is
of those in Riverside, that park.
there is one.
You know, that's been notorious, and I've got so many complaints, and that's been an issue with drug deals going down there.
And that was put in approximately a year ago, and we have had no calls for anything on that, but the police will have the ability to go back and pull a video of it.
Chief, I understand.
And we have signs that,
I want to know, why don't we have security cameras down at City Hall?
We're putting that in the budget too. I talked about that earlier. We actually just got a price for that, and it's going to be approximately $30,000 to $40,000 to do that. But yes, there is definitely a benefit to doing that.
I just hope that the security cameras include a fire alarm system.
Yes.
I mean, if you don't get a fire alarm system in that building, if something was ever happening, it's over with. And that building's too valuable for not to have a fire alarm system in it.
do we also have signage around saying that the parks are, being watched by security so that it deters?
No, ma'am, I don't believe there are currently any signage in place. We could definitely look at that.
Are there signs at Glen Burnie Park? Cameras at Glen Burnie Park?
No, not yet.
Got a few at Lawson Creek, correct?
Lawson Creek are coming to address certain, and we're really looking at the areas that we're getting complaints on for activity that we don't want to happen at the parks.
Yeah.
We definitely need them over at Glen Burnie Park.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, Kim or Foster, can you give me a little bit more information on your cemeteries? You got your $225,000 there. Can emphasize on the shelters. What are you planning on doing with the shelters, or what are you replacing them? What's going on?
So currently at Newton Memorial Cemetery and Evergreen Cemetery, there are basically little carport structures that are out there for cemetery services. And the board actually brought this up, I think it was last year during this budget process, about consideration for that. And so we do see a need to increase the size. Now, Newbern Memorial Cemetery, that is definitely the future of our burials. They have more spaces there than anything, and we see quite a lot of burials in that cemetery. So there's probably 5 to 10 services a week there on average, and so a lot of those folks like to go there for that, but you can only really put 6 or 8 underneath that shelter. If it's raining or anything like that, it makes it more difficult. That way the funeral home will have to provide additional shelter space. So having a little bit bigger that looks better and more suitable for a cemetery environment, we think that would work out. Also the thing with Greenwood Cemetery, Evergreen Cemetery, and Cedar Grove Cemetery, there are no more spaces available in those. And so adding the niches for cremains would definitely help out. A lot of people would like to be buried in those cemeteries, and so we have located several areas in each of those cemeteries that would be suitable to be able to install those.
That's great.
I'm surprised I didn't see anything about an amphitheater.
Well, I think Carrie's going to say something.
Oh, okay.
So don't worry.
That was included in the phase 2 of Martin Marietta planning. So,
Let's hear about it.
hear about it? We need some money for it.
So as you know, we have just completed one process with 2 grants, Parks and Recreation Trust Fund and the CAMA grant, and all the upgrades that have taken place so far have all been grant proceeds. I think we've had approximately $32,000 in general fund allocations to go toward the CAMA grant. So with the Martin Marietta Park, we now have, and I'm looking forward to the grand opening, because if you haven't been out there in a while, it's changed a lot. From the entrance with the black iron gates and the new signage, you'll be able to drive around a gravel loop. We've got 2 restrooms there, a very nice playground, 7 miles of trails that you can walk on. observation platforms, fishing platforms, 2 areas for canoe kayak access launches that are ADA accessible, several other launches in the main body of water. So it's going to be very, very nice. And so we've got a process coming back up very soon with another Parks and Recreation Trust Fund grant. We were successful with this one. We'd like to apply to get some more funds. And of course, looking for some sponsorships and naming rights to move forward with the next big items for that park.
That's it. Any other questions or comments?
Thank you, Terry. All right, Chief Gallagher with police. Is everyone fine? Do you want to take a quick break, or is everyone good to go?
Keep going.
All right.
Does anybody need to use the bathroom though? That's a thing.
So I would like to circle back very quickly before I begin to answer a question asked earlier regarding the funding of EMS. I have an answer to that. We in the comm center handles every incoming EMS call, and we dispatch to every EMS call inside the city. However, EMS does not fund any of our operating costs. The only thing that they do cover is their own radios and the maintenance of their own radios. So I wanted to clear that up. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to represent what I think is the finest police department in North Carolina. I am almost 1 year into my tenure as the chief of police, and I'm extremely proud to represent the incredibly professional men and women that serve our community. But what I am most proud of is being an ambassador and a cheerleader for our community. I've taken every opportunity that I can to get out into the community and speak to groups, small and large, to speak a lot about what I'm going to talk about here today. So our mission is community-centric. We are a community policing-based organization, and we measure our success by the absence of crime and the presence of justice. And our strategies moving forward in terms of meeting that is to focus our enforcement strategies on violent crime, especially gun violence, drug distribution and gang involvement. If we can have a definite impact on this area of criminality in our community, I believe we will have a greater success in reducing crime, and especially the fear of crime. We also wish to impact and affect the driving behaviors of many of our citizens. And so part of that focus is an enforcement and education strategy, but also to implement some traffic enforcement countermeasures to assist in trying to encourage drivers in eastern North Carolina to slow down, especially in New Bern. And I will say, in every opportunity I have to speak to a group, whether it's the Kiwanis Club or the Rotary or Civic Leagues, they all tell me the same thing with respect to drivers speeding, and so we do the best that we can with that. When I speak about community engagement and community policing, that's a three-pronged approach. It's partnerships, it's relationships, and it's rebranding. And we will continue to push on that oak tree. It's often said, if you push on that oak tree long enough, you can bend it. And that is what we are doing in terms of rebranding the profession of American policing specific to New Bern. We want to leverage the technology that is advancing within the field of law enforcement. The criminal element, it certainly takes advantage of technology, so we need to likewise address that as well. And the other part, and I'll speak a lot more on how we want to prioritize our training dollars, and specifically where that goes in terms of leadership training for
our internal leadership, but more importantly, the core competencies of the men and women that actually do the job that we're asking them to do. So our budgetary goals is focusing our operational expenses on maintaining staff that is well trained and properly equipped. And also you'll see when I talk a little bit about our CIP strategies is trying to advance those technologies and equipment and training to make us more successful. So even though I asked Foster for a blank check, I know I don't get a blank check. There's a finite amount of money that myself and every other director here has. And so when I talk about priorities in terms of training, one of the cuts, if you will, one of the strategies that I used as the director was to see where can I best use those dollars. And one of the first things that I told my staff was we were going to cut all of our conference attendance. There were two exceptions to that, but as the vocal leader of the police department, the first thing I said was, as the police chief, I would not go to a conference this year. Usually the police chief goes to 2 or 3 a year, and I said, for purposes of trying to set an example for staff, I was cutting all of the conferences in terms of trying to meet a certain a dollar amount in terms of matching where we were last year in terms of training. I'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. When we talk about a well-trained and equipped police staff, we're talking about supervisory training and also specialized assignments. In the police field, and I think I can speak a little bit about the fire department, but not every police officer can do every job. They're not a jack of all trades per se. A young patrol officer that hits the streets after BLET is not really capable of handling a homicide investigation or a crime analysis job or a tactical position. These are very specialized training, so we want to maximize our young workforce in terms of providing them with the training that they need. I'm going to talk about our fleet replacement, and I know that the previous chief probably beat this drum quite often, and so, but I want to show you some metrics to kind of highlight where we are as an agency in terms of our fleet, and I'll talk about the technology again in just a second. So if you look at this slide, and this is really talking about some of the technology that's out there that would certainly help us in terms of trying to meet our mission. And of the 11 CIP items that we have presented, I will talk about fleet, which is CIP number 1, but I want to talk about our number 4 CIP item, and that is to bring us to full Viper compliance, and these are our police radios. So we have about 3 years before we are mandated to bring us into full compliance. We have utilized options to use grant funding, and there are some other monies out there that potentially we could use. The assistant city manager and I have been strategizing how best to use those dollars to meet that mandate. The tactical robot, which is roughly a $16,000 piece of equipment, and what created in my mind an absolute need for this piece of equipment was the incident that occurred last year with respect to the Craven County Sheriff's Office, where one of their deputies was shot, and we had a barricaded subject situation, and we had no ability to have situational awareness inside that structure. And had we had the ability to send in a robot, we would have been able to allow our staff to be more, or to create a situation in which our staff was not placed in an undue, unsafe situation.
Chief,
yes, sir.
Before you go on, back to number 4, didn't we just buy a new radio system, a complete new system? It was like a last minute sort of thing that we were
Yes, that was in communications. That's the overall mother product.
Okay.
These are the radios that the officers wear, the portable radios.
So they're all compliant though, right?
They all will work. The Viper is a statewide system that can talk to any other Viper system, so that if we are called through an MOU to go to Kinston or go to Jacksonville, or if they came here, we would know that we could use the Viper system and we could all talk to each other.
Right. Okay.
Gray Key, Shot Spotter, and NIBIN are high-end items, and I'm happy to discuss those if necessary, but I would like to move forward. Our current staffing, we have 118 and a half billeted positions. Of those, we currently have 8 vacancies on the sworn side and 3 on the civilian side. 2 of those vacancies are telecommunicators. We do have a young department. And although I wish our retention rate was not, I wish we could retain all of our subject matter experts, but in the field of law enforcement, it is difficult, number one, to recruit talent, but it's also even more difficult to retain talent. And what we're seeing industry-wide, we're seeing it here in New Bern, that our staff is leaving the profession of law enforcement and is going into the private sector. Therefore, when we need to replace specialized assignment personnel, we have to train them and ensure that they are capable of performing the tasks that we're asking them to do. And that last bullet I talked about, every chief, and this probably relates to every other director, that recruitment and retention are critical components of an effective organization, improving morale and advancing opportunities and communications, and providing employees with an opportunity to have a say in the input of our organization is a key focus of how I do business as a leader, and I have implemented several strategies to help move that forward. I pulled together I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a question. And you have several divisions within there, and you have a drug unit, correct?
Yes,
you have
we
a
do.
And an investigation unit, or are they all part of one team?
They're in the same investigative division, but they're different.
Separate teams?
Yes.
Are those understaffed because of your vacancies, or all your vacancies in entry-level policemen?
Most of them are in our entry-level patrol divisions. We do have a few in our investigative division, namely the violent crime detectives. We're trying to encourage and recruit from the body of our operations staffs to step up and move into these specialty units.
Do you see that as probably the biggest weakness that we have in that area? Maybe we have more unsolved crimes or murders than usual. Is it because we have a lack in that division?
No, I would not attribute that. In fact, our clearance rates, I'm very proud of those clearance rates. There was some conversation about how many unsolved homicide cases, and in reality, over half of them, number one, they were either determined that they were all homicides, but not all homicides are criminal acts. So murder is illegal, justifiable homicide is not. And in 2 of the cases that we had, the prosecutor had determined that those were justifiable homicides. So there's no prosecution. We know who committed the act, although there's no prosecution. So I'm very comfortable in the staff that we currently have. They're very professional, they know what they're doing, and I would not say that that's a weak point in our operations, but I will say, as we lose these talented staff through attrition, we need to replace them, and that's when I'll talk about the training strategies moving forward on that. So let's talk about our vehicles. Now, this is the same drum that I'm going to beat, the Tucson Summers probably beat every year. So we have 104 vehicles in our fleet, and every one of those vehicles are evaluated not by the police department, but is evaluated by the city garage. And they created the objective metrics in which every vehicle is scored. Of the 104 vehicles that we have in our fleet, 43% of those are recommended for replacement. 27 of those are what is considered red line vehicles. They could go out at any time. And 18 of those, obviously, as this indicates, are ready for replacement. We are only asking to replace 13% of those, and we're asking for 12 patrol vehicles and 2 vehicles to assist in or to augment our investigative side of the house. So that's 14 vehicles, and we are making do with what we have, but I am concerned with the condition of the fleet, and if we're only going to replace 8 at a time or 10 at a time, these numbers are just going to exasperate themselves. They're going to increase.
Quick question, Chief.
Yes, sir.
How many vehicles are shared, and how many guys have their own personal vehicle?
So we do have some of the fleet that is assigned to staff based on what their role in the organization is. One of the strategies that we are internally working on, and this is we haven't yet present this to my leadership. The city manager, the assistant city manager, is trying to figure out how we can assign 1 vehicle per employee, which we believe will be a much better strategy for the use of our vehicles. So that they're not being driven hot-seated all the time. You work a 12-hour shift, and then the next employee comes in and works that vehicle for a 12-hour shift. So we are looking at strategies to try to mitigate the wear and tear of the equipment by assigning 1 vehicle per employee.
But do you know that number?
I do not have that number with you right now. I will say, well, I can say this now, because part of our due diligence and what I just told you was to get those numbers. If we purchase 27 additional vehicles, I could outfit every employee with a car. 27 additional cars. That's after deadlining a few of these.
Chief,
Ma'am.
we see throughout town in various places parked police cars, empty cars that sit there.
Yes.
Are these cars that are in the immediate replacement need and you park them? Because if that's the case, you could reduce that number and just, they're not being used because they're being parked. And, you know, I just feel like maybe we need to look at those, and then it might reduce that number, and or leave them there if you're gonna, that's what the vision you want those parked police cars, but I do see them throughout town.
Well, very, very rarely do we scarecrow our vehicles, and what scarecrowing means is you just place them out there and somebody thinks, oh, there's a police officer nearby. We do this occasionally, especially during the holiday seasons, in which we will park them in certain strategic locations for that mere purpose. But what I believe you're seeing are satellite parking. So when we have an employee that lives in Jacksonville or lives in Havelock, and they are not assigned a specialty unit, they're not a tactical officer, they're not a detective eligible for call out, they have to park their car someplace in the city. And they will, so when they come to work, they park their POV in that particular spot. There's a few in Carolina Colors, there's a few in other places, and so they will switch it out. So what you're seeing is a car that is awaiting that employee to come back, and that would be an assigned vehicle.
Okay. Just, that makes sense, thank you.
Okay. So I have, so over the summer, I have found it necessary to park that little vehicle, and I told my staff I did not want them to use that over the summertime because of the oppressive heat. That vehicle right there, which was, when it was originally purchased, I think it was purchased with all the good intentions in the world. However, it turned out to be a lemon, and so it took some time to get a replacement. But it has no air conditioning, and I could not in good conscience have an employee, and by the way I judge employees is I don't care if you carry a gun and have a badge. If you work and for the New Bern Police Department, you have value, and I treat you equally the same. And I would never put a police officer in a vehicle that didn't have air conditioning in Eastern North Carolina, and I certainly wasn't going to put one of my traffic enforcement employees that are one of the best ambassadors for this city. And by the way, I'm the chief of police here because I met one of these people, and I was so impressed by by how I was treated. I actually applied for the job here. That's another long story. But the fact of the matter is, this vehicle is out there now because January, February, March, it's not a big deal. Maybe November and December, maybe not a bad option to have. But during the rest of the early summer, and certainly during the summer, this vehicle is unsafe for that staff. So what I have proposed is an opportunity to make an argument that we can trade this vehicle in, and I have monies in my current budget right now to buy a small traditional gas-powered vehicle to perform the same function, and that would be a 12-month vehicle for the purposes of the traffic enforcement staff. And so that recommendation has been forwarded to the city manager. I present that to you here in the event that you have any issues. But I think for purposes of providing safety and welfare for all of my staff, I think we can all agree that in August, any time that it's hot outside, the ambient temperature is as hot as it is, I think it's time to get rid of that vehicle.
Don't you think about an electric car, since we have the charging stations downtown now, they could charge right there, and maybe since they're only going that very short distance, they probably get more bang for your buck. I know it would be more expensive, the car itself, but especially since we have the charging stations there.
How long have we had this? I just remember seeing this recently.
Yeah, we bought it originally, this might be the second one, but MSD paid for it, and it was, what,
2018.
2018.
Right after I got here, that was that summer.
Fiscal 4. Well, is that, but we've had parking in place.
One before.
There was a car before that we bought, the original car. That must have been the Lemon.
So who bought this one? I don't remember seeing this in any of our budgets, do you?
I don't know where that came, but the first one was paid for by MSD, and I don't know if they got a trade-in or...
They basically gave us another vehicle. They took the old one back and gave us this one.
Okay. Without air conditioning?
Yes.
Did the first one have air conditioning?
No.
Can you upfit for air conditioning on
No,
this?
you cannot upfit it with air conditioning.
So this new car will be coming out of SD funds?
You know,
Well,
we could look at the
Is that
difference.
parking?
No, I mean, we paid for the first car, and that was supposed to be used and should have been still in good shape. It doesn't go, so I don't,
We have found a dealer who would take this thing in on a trade.
because the vehicle was picked out by the chief. So that's who picked the vehicle out and, you know, told us what we needed to buy and how much money it was going to cost.
So how much is it, a new one that you're talking about providing a trade? So what do you have a figure that you're looking at for the overall new purchase?
I have seen that figure. It's roughly $20,000. We'll get, I think, $12,000 on this, and I have an additional $8,000. But I'll get you that after.
We paid $33,000, I think, for the first one. $30,000.
So you're proposing to trade it in and use police department funds to purchase the new one?
Yes.
And you would like to do that immediately?
Yes.
What kind of action does he need for that?
Well, he said it's in his budget already.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. What kind of action does he need for that? Just
supports the thought of that, gives direction, we can pursue that.
if he's got money in his budget, I say go for it. I mean, it's not doing us any good in June, July, and August.
Before we get to the end of the year here. All right. I do want to highlight the training needs. So that totals $68,725 was a figure we wanted to shoot for. It's not the figure that we wanted. In fact, we started with everything on the table at $105,000 in our training, and that simply just was too high a figure. So that's where we began the prioritization of getting us down to a more manageable figure of $68,000 plus. And what you see is how we are prioritizing those monies, and the biggest chunk of that goes into our investigative division to train new investigators, followed by our traffic division, and then SRT, which is our SWAT team, and then followed by our leadership training. So to break it all out, that is where we are looking to spend our training budget. All of the conferences removed to help us to get us there. I'd rather have an investigator who is well skilled and trained on 4th and 5th Amendment than I would prefer to go to Las Vegas to the IACP conference. So that's where we reached that figure.
In regards to the training, how is the simulator going?
The simulator is great. That was money well spent. To provide our officers with real life scenario style training is invaluable. There's one thing to be proficient in one's marksmanship, sending rounds downrange at the range is great, but that does not, there's no substitute for real life, almost 3D training.
And how's the participation been for outside agencies?
It is constantly in use, so other departments know it's there and they're utilizing it as well.
Okay, thank you.
So I'd like to end my presentation with some future needs. When I talked about ShotSpotter and NIBIN and some of these other high-end items, we would like to implement a real-time crime center, and I'm happy to brief on that later if needed. I know that there is conversation and talk about consolidating the comm center, but before we ever get to that point, I believe it is necessary for our current operations to have a civilian communications director to facilitate the needs of our TCs and our operation. To answer your question, to answer an earlier question, currently fully staffed, we have 3 TCs and 1 supervisor. In terms of trying to have that 4-to-1 ratio, we would have to hire 4 additional FTEs to get us to that. So I wanted to make sure I followed through with that. As the chief of police, training is critically important, and 2 things that I would love to see is for us to have a driving track, and I know the fire department and the BLET program over at Craven County Community College would also like to see that, but we need a new shooting range. What we currently have available to us, we are making do, but I can tell you that it is not state-of-the-art, and it does meet our basic needs, but I would love to see a facility in which we have a more of a state-of-the-art firing range. And an emergency service complex is something that the fire chief and I have spoken about. I think both of us agree that to have that dual emergency complex would be a great opportunity, and it would also be an opportunity for us to house an EOC if it became necessary for another storm. And one last thing is, I do know that, and I don't want to speak for the fire chief, but when he was going through his accreditation, one of the demerits, for a lack of a better way to describe this, was the fact that we did not have a civilian comms director was noted by their accreditation standards. And the New Bern Police Department is a flagship agency in terms of accreditation. Very few police departments are accredited, and what a flagship agency is we've maintained accreditation for over 5 consecutive cycles, and we are up for reaccreditation in the fall of next year.
In relation to the shooting range, outdoor, indoor, or a combination of both?
It would be, likely would be an outdoor range. An indoor range has a lot of EAP considerations. They're extremely expensive, so it'd probably be an outdoor range.
But with a outdoor range, you have to go somewhere outside the city limits and with quite a bit of land, correct?
Yes, sir.
We got a spot. city owns a property on West Craven Middle School Road. If we could get access to it, it would be ideal.
No, I was just, and I think that's great, but I mean, you also have the Craven County range, correct?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask
That
for.
you have access to?
Is there any opportunity to partner with the
Well, I think
county
they
on
already
any of
do.
this? But I mean, for a real-time crime center, emergency services complex, would that be to benefit, to partner and reduce both of our costs, but really assist throughout? Because I believe the partnership, well, I know the partnership is 100 times better now, and y'all really working together. We're seeing the results of a lot of drug crimes being gone after and solved, and I think that's a good thing, but I'd like to see this continued partnership and maybe shared resources, and I think it's better for our citizens. More bang for the buck, because we have a lot of county people that come into New Bern, and people don't know where the lines are drawn, so they have no clue, but I think if we could work together, and training is good for everybody.
I agree. Let me finish with my question though about the range. My thoughts, and I have no experience in the police service whatsoever, but if we went somewhere like where the fire department training ground is now, or another piece of property somewhere inside the city, and you put an indoor pistol range for qualifications, and then use the county's range or something like that for long gun training. I mean, I'm thinking that range is so far outside the city limits, you probably have to spend time sending your people out there on their time off to qualify, correct?
Well, we're currently going out in the middle of Craven County now to use their range.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's a long ways out.
The problem with indoor range that most enthusiasts that want to just go and shoot, they'll go, and we need at a minimum a 25-yard line. So, and then we need to advance forward to go to as close as the 7-yard line. So, in a static indoor firing range, the shooter doesn't move and the target moves towards them. And I don't know if the state certification would allow for that type of practice. And so, again, an indoor range is very expensive.
Well, I can answer part of that. I know from previous experience, we did contract with a indoor range, and it was certified.
Would you use Danny Nicely? Down in Newport?
Newport, yeah.
Danny Nicely, yeah.
And I'll tell you, it's saved on a lot of time, because you can do day, night, in half a day, as opposed to waiting. And
where did you do your long gun training?
There's a outdoor range up there in Newport.
I mean, Chief, I'm just saying that from experience with back in my days with the fire department, if you're going to send somebody out of town to train, you have to do it on their time off. If they had a range close by that they could go to maybe even while on duty, or at least close by in town or something like that, that might be easier for the officers, and might be a little better on your pocketbook. That's the reason why we fought so hard to get a training center for the fire department in town, because the guys could train on duty and still be in service.
I think the current strategy is that we would not leave the county we would not leave Craven County in terms of trying to meet this dual facility.
I'm fine with whatever you want to do, but I just think an indoor range for pistol certifications is the way to go.
Right. Two questions. There's literally acres of land that has been undeveloped. I've been here 11 years. That's directly behind the Elizabeth fire station. Not sure if that's an idea. And then also, if you did have an indoor range, is there a way for there to be outside individuals to be able to go and use it at a price where it's kind of paying for maintenance and things of that nature when it's not being used by the police department? I don't know if we're able to do that, but it's a thought.
I think everything's on the table. We can have conversations about that.
All right, Mr. Hughes, you got what, about 20, I know some folks gotta get out of here around 3, you got what,
Yeah.
water, sewer, electric, and public works?
That's correct. We have 3 more to go. So, thank you, Chief. If we could get Mr. Clay with Public Works.
Somebody else needs.
Will we not have quorum for anybody that needs to leave?
Yeah, okay. I just put it in because I'm, you open it for me, I'll leave it.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. On behalf of the staff of Public Works, I think I would do them a disservice because they helped me put this together. Actually, it's their budget. George Childs, Aaron Nelson, David Cox, Dan Casserly, Graham Price, Avery Smith, who is here, and a timely walkout. Hopefully Avery will be back.
He's behind you.
Yeah, oh, there he is. Okay. Thank you, sir. And then, of course, last but not least, I'm going to tell you that we believe it is Pam Bill Rose, who does our insurance, and Sherry Baldry, who is, of course, the hub.
It's really, just so you know, the Public Works Department is Sherry and Pam. There's nobody else. They don't, they run it.
And with that, that concludes our presentation.
Yeah.
So I do want to say kudos to my colleagues. I feel that I have been tossed a baton here to carry on what they've already established as far as credible organizations. We have the same thing here in Public Works. It's been intimidating following police, but rest assured, we are just as much on display every day as Public Works by clean and rideable streets, the clean and flowing ditches, and the safe and operable facilities that we maintain day in and day out. So with that, just wanted to give you a brief overview of this budget. What will be absent, and I'll be very candid with you, are the charts and graphs and figures that would normally accompany this, but rest assured they'll be in the munis budget, and those figures will be shown as far as well as justifications. We have an operating budget of $10 million. There are 7 divisions, which I have shown administration, insurance, fleet, and equipment, which you all call garage here, and facilities, which you all call public buildings, streets, solid waste, and stormwater. There are 10 funding accounts that make up those 7 divisions. Thought I would concentrate on the accomplishments that we've done, and these accomplishments may seem familiar because they are pulled forward from last year's presentation. There's nothing else to add. These are in fact what were completed as projected from last year. Completion of the old airport road project. We implemented the Trent Road widening project.
Real quick, what?
Yes, sir.
I know you won't know, but does it implemented Trent Road widening project? I thought we got a quote of like $170,000 for the drawings for that, but we never did anything with it.
I think it was just drawings, right?
Right, and we said don't do it because it was too much, so I'm not sure what, okay.
Well,
I thought that was
the project was not constructed.
Yeah, I don't think we got the design either. I think the estimate for the design was 170 and we said hold off on it, so I just want to make sure I wasn't missing anything.
Yes, sir. And initiated the annual citywide sidewalk improvement project that, of course, I am familiar with. We commenced the City Hall elevator design. There was a decrease in the brown goods tonnage, those solid waste term for cardboard, corn cobs, pine needles, and anything that's biodegradable. Hurricane Florence Category A FEMA projects were done. Citywide stormwater audit was completed, they conducted, but also completed. Any questions, Avery Smith is back here to address those. We performed the system upgrades to the HVAC and units and generators citywide. We constructed the fiscal year 2021-22 streets resurfacing project. And lastly, we have the phase 1 Biddle Street Pond expansion project was constructed. The design, which is phase 2, has been initiated. And lastly was we have commenced the federal alley improvement project, which was an MSD grant. Staffing requests, again, nothing new. What I pulled forward are the requests that were turned down. We asked for them last year apparently, and we have turned them, we were turned down. I do have to note that there's a typo. First request, I'll come back to momentarily. The second bullet is the second request of 2 street division equipment operators. That should read 1. And the second request of 1 stormwater division equipment operator should be 2. So they're actually swapped. From asking for 2 of the equipment operators, which we did not receive last year, and 1 of the street division equipment operators, which we did not receive. Getting back to the first bullet, which is the first request in support of the intern program that HR had talked about previously. I've had success in many of the public works organizations that managed to have interns. I propose in the budget a 5% increase of the admin budget, which is about $20,000, to get paid interns. I'm not sure what the number will show out here. I'm encouraged that we already have some traction in the intern program, so I hope that will be successful here. That intern would work on special projects and things that we have coming at us here in public works, and again, I've had success in managing those, and see that we can do that here. Lastly, our capital outlay, those are the top 3. We do have 8 items that are in the budget, but those are the top 3, which are an excavator, the chipper, and the chip trailer that goes along with that.
Is that a second chipper? Because we just bought one a couple of years ago.
Yes, apparently it is.
So we need 2?
Yes, sir. It's solid waste. Lastly, I thought bringing up forward, being new, obviously today is 3 weeks on the job, that I could safely speak to the challenges that we have. And they're not any different than public works organizations that I've come across. The good news is that we share the same concern, and that is that we have to continue to keep our responsiveness at a high level, by the same token continue to maintain our daily output, and that continues to be a struggle even here as well. The good news is that we're doing it. I'm not sure how much we can sustain that from year to year without having to increase staff or resources, which brings me to my second area of COVID operational constraints. That you will hear, I think, repeated from my colleagues after me in the utilities, that continues to impact both manpower and material resource depletion. We all share that as well. To end on a positive note, we have opportunities here. We really do. I see this next wave of public works professionals we have. We have an opportunity to see the future, to help shape the future, bring on the future. I believe those that will be sitting in this seat here in years to come. And in doing that, I would like the city to be positioned to be an accredited public works agency. And APWA accreditation is a high bar, but I believe we can achieve that. And our staff is excited about that opportunity. In doing that, the council will see coming up in May, the 3rd week of May, we celebrate National Public Works Week, which you'll see a proclamation coming for you. Lastly, the benefits of that will be that it will increase community awareness of public works. Met with our PIO, and we're excited about some of the education and outreach opportunities we'll have. With that completes our budget presentation, and both myself and Avery Smith, stormwater here.
I have a question. On your first slide here, where you talked about the Hurricane Florence Cat A FEMA project done, how can that project be done when we have ditches that haven't been touched? And I've complained several times about this. It's nothing new. I pointed out a ditch that has trees across it from the hurricane and asked questions about when is this ditch going to get surveyed, and I was told actually it ended up had been surveyed. Yeah, but we've got places. You ride through Carolina Colors, and the outflow of some of those drain pipes where the sediment's this much higher than the drain pipe. And listen, I take this personally because I fought hard to get this 33 to 36 million dollars ditch project from FEMA. So I really do take this personally. And I'm just concerned, I mean, you got this kind of money for a Cat A project, and every ditch in New Bern should have had sediment removed from it, and they're at least surveyed for sediment removal. It's going to be hard for me to say we need new employees to clean ditches out next year when we haven't taken advantage of the $36 million from this year. And Cat A, I don't care what you say, Cat A, in my opinion, is nowhere near, and I'm not fussing at you because I know you've been here 3 weeks.
Yes, sir.
Cat A is on, I mean, there's ditches that's been reported several times, and to this day, they haven't been touched. And it was a Cat A project.
I agree with you, because there's some ditches in my area, and that Duffyfield Canal is one of the big major problems.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I've seen city crews go to a ditch into Bern, right beside the dog park, where they complained that the drainage was slowed, and this has been a year ago, and in front of the, right where the ditch, and I don't know the terminology, but where the ditch falls into the wetlands, there's a pile this big around of sediment. That is, I mean, that qualifies through FEMA to be cleaned out. But no, we sent city crews in there and cleaned it out. I mean, it's just hard for me, it's hard for me to say, it's hard for me to understand the reason why when we've got all this money. How much money have we spent on Cat A? No,
Okay.
Yeah.
How much have we got outstanding for Cat A work?
So
About.
that's the debris, yeah, that's the debris removal
Yeah.
for Cat A. I'll have to, it's not on this particular one, I don't think, because it's.
Last I heard, it's somewhere around the neighborhood of $5 or $6 million. When it probably should be somewhere in the neighborhood of $20 million.
with that same regard, I remember last year, we also asked for it to be an automated mapping of the ditches and what was being done and what part was being touched, whatever happened to that, especially for visibility for community members that are calling and asking and complaining that their ditches haven't been touched. Pembroke, Duffyfield.
We'll have to get with George Childs on this to get some more information. He's currently out and unavailable right now. But we will get to an update on this. And I know that Mr. Williams had been working with George on these things. So.
And I understand, you know, that you've only been here for 3 weeks. I understand that.
What information does Avery have to present today on the ditch cleaning? Does he have anything?
I can. Good afternoon to the members of the board and the mayor first of all, and then let me say that when we had Draper Aiden evaluate the ditches throughout all of the watersheds, they had stringent qualifications for what they could actually call Hurricane Florence debris for sediment. They identified a lot of these ditches that y'all speak of, but they also realized that if they tried to ask FEMA for money for certain things that they realized that may not have, it could have put us in a situation. Does it make sense?
Where'd the $32 million figure come from? Didn't they come down here and walk like all these miles of street?
They qualified 360,000 cubic yards of debris removal.
That's true. And
there's no list as to what ditches it come out of. There's not a list anywhere.
We do have a master.
You got a master list, but FEMA never doesn't have a master list.
Yeah, that's very true.
So FEMA don't care what ditch it comes out of. They care whether or not you get 360,000 cubic yards.
So then the contractors would be the one to have that information?
No, they made a master map for all the contractors when they did the work. The contractors had a load number to meet within those contracts.
And Avery, you do a wonderful job. I mean, I can pick up the telephone, got a problem, Avery's right there just like that. But let me ask you, how many times have you heard about that ditch that I know of? And I'm gonna be right up front and tell everybody about it that's beside my house. How many times have I told you guys that somebody needs to come look at this ditch because it's full of debris and I'm not gonna clean it out. It's full of debris. How many times have you heard that?
Several.
So why didn't FEMA go in there and why didn't they go get contractors in there?
That is a good question, and we could I guess as long as the Cat A is still open, because
and I understand. And then also, what about the one behind Mellon?
Mellon.
How many times? No.
Oh, I know which one you're talking about.
Casino or Mellon? Which is it? It's
It's a Casino, off of Casino.
Yeah. How many times have we had conversation about that ditch and we're gonna get Draper in there to survey it?
I believe that on those ditches, those are the ones that they actually, a lot of those key ditches, they looked at them and they said, well, we can't really classify this as hurricane debris. And
and when I heard that, that's the reason why I picked up the telephone and called our consultant and said, they don't want to say it's hurricane debris, although we all know it is, because there's trees and tree limbs and sediment and everything backed up in there. And this consultant said, just add it to the list and have it cleaned out. FEMA does not know or have a list of our ditches. FEMA wants you to remove 360,000 cubic yards of sediment.
So is that something that we can do, Avery?
we still can do it.
Yeah, until March 13th.
We have not closed. We have
to close it out.
That Cat A project being done is fiscal year. So we still in this fiscal year. So
but you got till March 13th.
Exactly.
Not then you got to ask for an extension, and you may not get an extension anymore.
So
it's been 2 years.
So out of the funding or the approval of the 32 million, we only utilize 6
That's only for Cat A. We still got. That's only Cat A. We got Cat. We still got Cat D work to do too. So.
Okay, so
which is permanent work, which is like putting head walls in and stuff like that.
So, and how much sediment did come out?
I could get back with you with exact number. We have on in the contracts, they either meted it or exceeded the numbers in all the contracts at this point. So I can get I just do a big add.
And if we didn't hit that amount, do we have ready available people that can go out there and do it outside of our staff?
I had to ask that question. I believe I could get Draper to go back out and create another project if necessary.
You don't even need Draper.
So with that being said, so now we know that the ditches are not counted, so we can actually start to work towards the one that really needs the help, right?
The first thing you got to do is get an extension, and it's very doubtful. Even FEMA called us and told us you need to do something because it's very doubtful you'll get an extension on Cat A work.
So we need to start that this afternoon, so one can start the phone call this afternoon. So with that being said, once we get that done, so now how many men do we actually have in place to maintain?
We got 5 employees. That's stormwater.
And I'll never vote to hire any more for cleaning out ditches until we utilize the contract labor that we've got set up already. I'm sorry. It's a lot easier for contractors to go in there and do all this work, this nasty, dirty, terrible work. You know, it's easy, but we got $32 million to do it with. And
understand
contractor, and you want to put city crews and clean one out that a daggone contractor should have already had cleaned out?
No. It's the maintaining part now that comes available that we're looking at.
Be easy if they were cleaned out proper.
We still, I mean, it only takes a season for it to turn back.
How many miles of
It's
ditches?
80 miles, but if they're perfectly clean, the only thing you got to do is walk through them once a year or something like that, and you know. But
so 5 minutes can do.
I don't know. I don't really know. I just don't want to
can we get back with you next week? And, because I'll get them to look into it, and we'll do what we can to try to get this extension, but if not, see what we can do up until that point.
Very good.
Try to get some of those, and we'll get a listing and report back to you all.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, I don't take it personal. After hurricane, after earthquakes and fires in California and places like FEMA, you have to do your accounting right. I get that. But reconciling is the key, so you can get reimbursed.
Hey, just don't bring any of them things with you now.
Yes, sir.
We got enough
Promise
here.
my wife I wouldn't do that.
No earthquakes.
All right. Well, if there aren't any more questions, conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you for your information, Adrian.
Thank you. Thank y'all for letting me
Thanks,
give me a chance to speak.
Okay, well, I do have another question for you, Adrian.
Yeah, I'd love to know the Metropolitan's review.
Yeah, well, make sure he.
I'll get that number for you.
Yes.
Tell him to add that to the list.
All right, Mr. Hughes will come up with water resources.
See, Charlie, they said the best for last.
Hey, weren't you last year?
Last every year.
Yeah, we should mix
They
it up.
save the best for last.
I'm gonna have to start moving you to the front.
Yes,
You
that's
and
what I
Jordan
said.
in public work.
All right, Mayor, members of the board, go ahead and get started. I know you are on a tight schedule, so I will go through this as quick as I can and try to get you out on your 3:30 goal. Real quick, there's no real changes to our water resource operations for the next fiscal year. As you know, our water resource operations comprised of 5 divisions that take care of all of our domestic water and wastewater needs for the citizens of New Bern as well as surrounding communities, currently serving right at 20,000 customers. Just a hair over that, and we should, as we roll into the rest of this fiscal year, we probably will roll over the 20,000 customer mark. It takes about $24.25 million to take care of what we do annually. And right now, we have a staff of 81 dedicated men and women that help meet all of our water and wastewater needs throughout the day. Our goals for next fiscal year are very similar to what they have been this past year. We will continue to invest a little over $1 million in our annual rehab and replacement programs for older water and sewer mains as well as our sewer pump stations. Continue to implement our large capital improvement projects for capacity development. We have 2 of these we've talked about for quite a while, one being the West New Bern Water Improvements Project, we hope to get going this fall, as well as the Township 7 Sewer Improvements Project, which is in permitting now. If we get the permits back, we should move that into the bids and construction phase this spring. So before the end of the calendar year, we hope to have somebody here working on both of these projects that we've been working on for quite a while. There's several other capital projects that they're in different phases of design and implementation that you will regularly see updates in the monthly report. We will continue to move with those as well throughout the rest of this fiscal year and moving into FY23. As we move into 23, we continue our efforts into I&I mitigation. Next year, we're looking to get started on phase 2 of our Northwest Interceptor Rehabilitation Project. This is the lining of a very large sewer outfall that runs through some floodplain from Oaks Road back to Glen Burnie, kind of around behind the DOT, very wet, very swampy area. Got about half of it done several years ago, and we're going to get the rest of it done before we have a major issue in that swampy area. And then, as we really have our long-range planning effort, where we want to make sure we've got a good roadmap for the next 7 or 8 years as we close out this decade. We are freeing up some debt in FY24 that will allow us to do some very large-scale sewer improvements for 4 or 5 years, and that will likely culminate in the expansion of our wastewater treatment plant as we round out the decade. So a lot of big things coming for our sewer system over the next 7 or 8 years. And challenges as we move into next FY, like everybody else, we're having to continue to adjust the operations to accommodate our impacts from COVID-19. We've done a fairly good job of support of the board, the management staff, have been able to not really have any hiccups in the operation and provide all the services we normally would with all the challenges that come along with the COVID-19 mitigation. NCDOT, water relocations in James City, and our MetroNet projects are something we've been talking about for a while. We've seen those really get into kind of the construction phase in the last probably 4 or 5 months, and we will continue to see those ramp up as we get through the end of FY22 and get into FY23. So by the end of the calendar year, as we get into December, November, December of next year, I would anticipate both of those projects to be really in what they would say their full construction mode. Metronet should be fully established with their contract crew base here, and as well as the DOT contractor relocating the water and sewer line. So that will continue to be a strain on our engineering and operations staff. We've done a great job, I think, of working with the manager, making some staffing changes, making some restructuring the organization to be able to accommodate this additional load coming in. And so far, everything seems to be going well. The programs we put in place are working, and right now we are keeping pace, and it looks like we shouldn't have much of an issue as those large projects continue in the area. New development, as Amanda mentioned, and I think it's pretty apparent if you drive around New Bern, new development has really ramped up in the last couple of years, really in the last 12 months. We've seen a significant increase in construction activity. It's a great thing for New Bern. But the only real downside of this from the utility perspective is it does put a strain on our material suppliers, our labor force. So we basically have the same need, whether it's a private developer doing a job, us doing a rehab job, materials, contract labor, design professionals. So we're starting to see a strain on that resource. So that the more construction demand you have in an area, you have a limited resource to get that construction demand done. And I think you'll continue to see that getting strained more and more as we move through the rest of this calendar year. The one big question out there is we have yet to really see the ARP money hit the ground. We've all talked about the ARP money. Every city's got it, every county's got it, every state's got it. Everybody's, I think, in the same boat we are, or the majority of municipalities and counties. They're really figuring out exactly what they want to do with the money. Some of it's getting allocated, some projects are getting designed. There's very little of that that's actually trickled down to people doing work, contractors doing work. By the end of this calendar year, I think you'll see a lot of that move to that phase. So you'll have, on top of the already increasing demand in private development, I think you'll see a very large increase in municipal and county projects, infrastructure type projects, that will further strain those resources, whether they're supplies, whether they're contract labor, professional services. I think they're all going to get very strained as you move to the end of 22 and into 23. But we're keeping an eye on that and we'll see what comes from it. So cost of supplies and materials, that is going to be an issue for us. Aside from the construction, our day-to-day treatment chemicals, buying gas, things that it takes to keep the water and wastewater plants running, to keep the operations running day in and out. We see those things continue to increase in cost, and really availability for the first time is actually becoming a problem. We can deal with the cost going up, we can learn, we can prepare for that, we can plan for that. Availability is something that we are really starting to see be a problem. If you've got the money and you can't get it, that's a problem. So that's a new challenge for us. A couple quick charts here just to kind of show you how we're growing. Very good on both the water and wastewater. We're ticking along very nicely in customer growth. You can see we did about 1.5% growth on the total customer base in 2020, and almost 3% in 21. On the sewer side, on the water side, a little lower. We do have more sewer customers just because we serve a very large area in James City that's sewer only. And the really good news that goes along with that is our revenues are continuing to grow with that customer base. So we're adding customers at a rate of 2-3% a year. The revenues are growing the same. We're heading in the right direction. That's all great news. Here's the bad news. So we're growing the customer base, we're growing the revenues at that 2.5 to 3% a year. What you're looking at here is the cost of final goods and final services. So essentially the blue line, the final demand goods, think of this being a 2x4. You go to Lowe's to buy a 2x4, so the cost of buying your 2x4. The purple line or the red line is your final demand service. This is the man that's going to nail the 2x4 up for you. So both of those components are increasing much faster than they historically have. And these are national numbers here. But you can see at the very left hand of the chart is more of a typical trend, somewhere between 0 and 3% of what those numbers normally live at year to year. And right now we're up in the 12+%. So The good news, the customer base is growing at 3%, our revenues are growing at 3%, the cost of getting stuff done is raising at 12 to 15%. That's the bad news.
Are you gonna have to look at adjusting the price we charge?
It's such a quick upshoot right now. That you see the graph at the very bottom left, our bingo. It's such a quick upshoot. I don't know. I don't know if it stays that way for the next 5 years. I don't know if it comes back down in 6 months. We'll see. Fortunately, we've been well managed on the operations side, on the financial side for the last decade. We've got some rainy day money. We're gonna pay attention to what's going on in the market. We're gonna pay attention to what's going on locally, nationally. We're gonna get through this year. I think we'll know a lot more by the end of this calendar year, which will be halfway through the fiscal year. We're gonna budget conservatively, and we'll come back to you and halfway through the calendar year and see, or halfway through the fiscal year in the calendar year, and have to provide you an update. Things may be considerably different.
I don't know, inflation projections and everything that you've seen, some reports even out today, that we're going to start seeing it next year. So 23 is going to be the tough.
A lot of unknowns, and we've seen it happen before. We saw it 06, 07, where things were looking the same, and then overnight the bottom falls out of it. So there's a lot of things that can happen, and we're not going to hit a panic button. We're going to continue to monitor what's going on. Do what we have to do to maintain all of our services, our high level of services we have in New Bern, and we'll keep you abreast of what's going on and let you know when we need to make adjustments. Right now, for
our customers, thank you.
For right now, we are not anticipating any rate increases as part of the proposed budget. So,
Jordan, if this is construction costs, obviously operational costs, I'm assuming, is going up a little bit as well, but probably not this steep. So if there were adjustments made, would it not make more sense to make them to like your tap fees and things of that nature versus our rate, where people who have had the service for years, why would they pay more for construction costs going up?
Good point. So the problem is we have new construction costs going up. So new pipe, new manholes, things of that go up for a new development. The city has really no investment in that initial construction. So if a developer comes in, it's going to take 50 acres and turn it into a subdivision. The way we operate, they put in all that upfront infrastructure. We really have no cost in that upfront infrastructure. Okay. Where this impacts us is now if I go to fix a 60-year-old sewer main.
This is repairs, not new construction.
Okay. Unfortunately, the spike in new construction, that cost will carry over. They're not going to discount my 60-year-old water main. They're going to charge them the same thing they would.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to highlight, what you're saying there, Alderman, everything you see in red, and this is a breakdown of our water and sewer fund allocations, kind of the percentage we spend on everything throughout the funds. Everything in the blue is somewhat of a fixed cost. You've got debt, you've got shared services. These are things that won't be impacted very much by those increases in the construction industry or increases in supplies and materials. Everything in red is kind of operational. And in those, try to break those out. How much is personal services? How much is actual supplies and materials? So you'll see you've got basically on both of those 30 at the very bottom number, 30 and 34% of both of those numbers are strictly supplies, materials, and services. So we see a 10 to 15% increase in that, and that's 30 and 34% of $10 and $12 million. So those are big numbers. So when you start talking 10 to 15% increases, those could be substantial impacts to the budget, and we will be closely looking at those throughout the rest of this fiscal year and the rest of the calendar year. So. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, anybody got questions?
Thank you, Jordan, to you and your staff.
All right, electric is next. Charlie?
Anytime.
Good afternoon. Last but not least, very similar update to Mr. Hughes. I'll preposition that with all good news. I'm not forecasting any rate increases, but a very, very similar forecast. I'll try to lead you through that as quickly as I can. Summary, forecasting about a $55 million operating budget this year. The electric department operates with 6 divisions: administration, distribution, power supply, communications and control. And then new to the electric department is utility business operations, which is metering and billing. They came over from finance, and then customer service and the payments department came over from finance. And those operations are working splendidly well. Functionally, we purchase and we deliver electricity, we meter it, we bill it, we collect revenues off of those sales, and we perform customer service activities, and we do system improvements. And oddly enough, we maintain our city fiber network. We do that with a staff, funded staff of about 88 people. Customers, as Mr. Hughes mentioned, we're trending upward with the number of customers. I call them meters, that's how I count them, about 23,000 meters. We're growing about 200 to 300 meters per year. Electric sales, along with a steady increase in meters, we're seeing a steady growth in sales revenues. That steep incline that you see between 20 and 22, I think that's a result of realignment of billing and metering and customer service and doing a better job with our metering and billing operations. As sales increase, we need to purchase more energy, so we see the same type of increase in this curve with the amount of energy we need to buy, and that also carries forward to the amount of energy that we need to purchase. Obviously, as we sell more energy, we need to pay for that energy, so those dollars are increasing as well. More good news on our power supply rates. I'm forecasting our rates to be flat through 2024. These are large wholesale contracts that we have with Kempa, and I'm forecasting those to remain flat through 2024, possibly an increase in 2025. At the same time in 2025, we should have some debt service rolling off of that contract, about $3.3 million, almost $3.4 million. And I'd have to say that that wholesale contract that we have it's outperforming the original forecast. That was, 2015? And it still is outperforming what we find in the marketplace as other alternatives for buying that energy. Operating capital will be focused on system maintenance and improvements, typical system expansion, regional growth that we're experiencing. We do some system modeling so that we ensure that we're a reliable and stable system, and we need to enhance our meter system with better tools for meter management and meter data management. And obviously it's always ongoing that we have to manage and deal with aging equipment. Staffing, I forecast that our staffing levels remain flat. I expect some reclassifications and some realignments of some key positions, but overall the funding level will remain flat. I'd like to do some work on our fees and schedule. Typical annual updates to those fees and schedules. I'd like to do some work on our street lighting rates and better align our LED lights that we're buying with a suitable rate that represents the cost of those LED lights. And I'm also looking at introducing a flat rate. Typically those might be used for very low power consumption, like 5 watts, or a small cell transmitter, where it just doesn't make sense financially to put in a large meter and measure it and bill it that way, where I might be able to come up with a flat rate that is cost beneficial. So I'd like to take a look at that throughout the year. Challenges, I'm seeing the cost of all goods and services rising. Our inventories are low. Material shortages are forecasted, and material delays. In addition to that, the labor market remains highly competitive, and it's largely driven by wages. COVID remains a challenge. I'm seeing day-to-day staffing levels decrease due to COVID, and that results in slower operations some days, and ultimately some staff burnout. That's what I'm seeing. Electric system capacity project, we've talked about that. I'm working on that. You'll see me bringing forward land acquisition, engineering award, and financing. We're working on all those things right now. Additionally, we continue to dispatch load management. We dispatch about 17 megawatts monthly, about a $4.8 million cost avoidance. And I'm still got my eyeball on battery energy storage. That's about another about a $1.4 million cost avoidance if we can do that. Duke is opposing us on this matter. We are winning. I'm trying to be as patient as I possibly can. I want to proceed.
Is this all through NECMPA?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We're working on a settlement with Duke right now.
When you say we, is it City of New Bern or Electricities?
It's NECMPA.
No, I meant, so it's Electricities, okay.
Yeah.
New Bern has a contract with NECMPA.
Right.
NECMPA has a contract.
You went off on your own.
NECMPA has a
Back in the
contract
day, we went off on our own.
NECMPA's the one that's in settlement with Duke.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Just want to be clear.
Thank you for clarifying that. NCDOT, Metronet, Mr. Hughes mentioned those. Those challenges are largely driven by the pace and the volume that they're going on, and we have to stay focused and get reimbursed for those.
How are they doing?
Splendidly well.
You might want to bring them in for an update.
I have a monthly meeting with them when we actually met on Wednesday, and last month they put in New Bern city limits alone over 12,000 linear feet of their infrastructure. So they're moving along pretty good, and we're happy to bring them in.
It's a pace we can handle. We did add some additional staffing and some resources last August in preparation for this. The pace that they've been rolling this out at, we've been able to keep up with. We're learning on both parties of how we manage this work and how it flows. And so far, it's going really well.
Good. Now the community's ready to get their service.
Blue Water Rise, they could sell every customer in Blue Water, every home in Blue Water Rise right now. I guarantee if they were to get over there.
Completely. The City of New Bern fiber network, at some point we're going to need to do some strategic planning on that system and make sure we're forecasting any growth that we're expecting and that meets our needs. We'll also have to firm up and kind of unwind any shared agreements that we have with the city or actually with the county, the city of Havelock. And then, as always, I need to keep an eye on the performance of our retail rates so that they're aligned with our power supply contract and they lead us to a healthy fund balance.
Charlie, I know it's always hard to tell because there's so many different rates with us versus Duke, but in the past we would get kind of like an average, a range. Is there a way that you could get us an updated list that shows us versus Duke? Because now I know if you're on load management with us and not with them in certain rate schedules, we're actually lower. Is there something updated that you could show us? Because I think Duke did they have an increase or getting ready to have it?
They had a 5% increase on their retail rate structure.
I think it's important for us to know that because 2025 will be here before we know it. We're going to have a $3.5 million annual debt service coming off. We've got some infrastructure improvements that we need to be factoring in on how much relief we want to give, if any, to our customers. I think it would be important planning if we can get that.
Yes, sir, I can do that. In addition to that, part of looking at our rates this year, we're doing it on electric, water, and wastewater. We're going to be looking at our cost of service and reviewing how our rates are performing there in a more detailed manner. So, but I can get you something.
Great, thank you.
When are you going to have some information on the substation for us?
I hope to have land contract agreements, purchasing agreements, in front of you within the month, as fast as those sellers can move. And I hope to have an engineering service agreements in front of you within the next month. And
Finance and I are working with on financing. We hope to have financing maybe aligned as early as June. June. So,
Great.
I hear you loud and clear, and I'm not dragging my feet on it.
Any update on the pay as you go? I know it's been slow with getting people to get over on it.
Last I looked, it's probably about 90 customers. It's extremely underperforming. I wish we could use it as a tool to incentivize other things. I've considered using it in lieu of payment plans or loans, requiring customers to go on that instead of putting them on a payment plan. There's complications that go along with that I just haven't been comfortable with and ready to recommend. It underperforms.
Need a campaign of some sort on that. I mean, I don't think most of the people even know about it.
We've marketed it at every level possible.
And that was part of the news bill, correct?
Pardon me?
Was that part of the news bill? The
No,
software?
no, this was a separate deal, and, you know, this has actually come up on an annual basis, and
We're still operating under a contract that was signed as a pilot project.
So if it continues to underserve you, you're going to take it away?
I would like some direction from the board. It costs us a lot of money. I don't have that number in front of us. I don't see where it brings us any value.
Oh my God,
I have difficulty supporting it.
I think we ought to get Colleen and do a nice press release and release it on Facebook, and then we can pick it all up and share it to our communities and stuff. And I mean, maybe try to drum up some.
But I thought with all the outrage about the deposit stuff years ago, this was supposed to take care of that.
That's right.
I wasn't here when we selected it. I don't know what it was supposed to accomplish.
So the thought process was we had the deposit because you had to get ahead of it because you were paying for post-consumption. So the thought was if you pay as you go, you didn't have to require that deposit because if they didn't pay their bill, they could immediately be cut off versus us getting in arrears for 30, 60 days or whatever. So do we not have that ability?
You do have that ability.
Okay.
And then also the other ability too is if they already had a big balance, it would turn over into basically being a balance, and you can pay a little bit at a time and still be paying towards your current usage. The other thing is, I mean, is this something when new customers come in, this is the first thing that we suggest to them? Because literally you can have an app and it will tell you you owe $5.96 or pay some money on it before your electricity shuts off. And then if you let it shut off, because I've tested it, you literally pay $10 and it's on within 5 minutes. It's amazing. I don't know why why people are not getting on this.
The other part of this is, and I don't have the analytics in front of me, I can certainly dive into it, but the last I looked, I believe the majority of our customers are doing electronic payments already. So let's say 60% of our customers are making electronic payments. Now we're down to about 10,000 customers. And of those 10,000 customers, some are doing automatic bank drafts, and some of them insist on coming in and paying the bill because it's a social experience that they like to have. So, we're narrowing that down to what really is our market penetration on this, and I don't have that answer for you today, but we've struggled.
So my question is the relief on the deposits that was made a few years ago not pushing people toward the pay-as-you-go now? Because they say, well, I don't have to pay this arduous deposit. I can just pay the small deposit, minimal deposit, and then we'll take the risk.
It's not enough to incentivize them.
Right.
That's frustrating. Because I mean, people that pay electronically, you literally can pay on your phone. It's crazy to me. It's literally prepaid. I don't understand, and because it's basically, it settles every day. Every day, and then when there's a difference at the end of the month, it settles, and you literally can see what you use every single day. $13 worth of, utilities. It's unbelievable to me.
We've also tried to advertise it as a customer presentment tool. So even if you're not interested in paying every day, or you're not concerned about your daily balance,
Here, it gives you the tools to look at your consumption on a more granular basis. And
you can pay based on your pay period. You can put $100 or $50 on this week and then the following week instead of having a big balance that you owe on that specific day. I mean, any type of campaign, over exaggerating it, I would appreciate that. And like, Astor said, because, I don't want the board to decide to get rid of it. I love it. I don't want to go back to that because to the paper bill and doing an average of what I'm using. It's literally telling me what I'm using every single day. And I don't know why
there are other means for customer presentment of that information without a pay-as-you-go type of arrangement where we can just present customer analytics and put that data at their fingertips without the cost of the prepay service. The other thing you should probably be aware of with the prepay service is it's quite staff intensive. What happens is these balances have to be trued up every month, and that's manually done by staff on every single account. So if we were to grow this, it does put a burden on staff, and right now it's just it's not overwhelming. We can do it because there's about 90 accounts. But
yeah, I was under the impression that this was supposed to be in correlation to units. That there's some way that it was going to work into units, that software coming in. I mean, it's 2022. There's no way to really automate squaring up the balance at the end of the month where it's not a manual process.
Once we get Munis implemented, we may see some efficiencies there, but I'm not forecasting anything right now.
And what's going on with Munis? I mean, I was not on the board and made suggestion that we move forward with that, and we're going into 4.5 years.
I personally, my staff has been working on the utility billing implementation. That's probably the only part of Munis that I could really speak to. And we're in the process of integrating with our metering systems and our other legacy systems, as to integrate with our outage management system. There's a lot of back-end design work that needs to be done. Once that's done, then we will want to parallel bill. I want to see every customer billed at least twice, 2 months, that we get the same bill in Munis that we're getting in our existing system before we abandon that. There have been long delays by the service provider. A number of things COVID related. They also had cybersecurity attacks. They've had multiple changes in project management. It's been very, very slow, very, very frustrating. The last update I got about a couple weeks ago was we might be ready to go in June. If we don't pull it off by June, we're probably looking at November.
Well, at least it's this year.
And one other thing on the pay-as-you-go, utilities have sent something out via their social media as recently as the past 6 weeks, I believe, as well. So they've been constantly sending things out, and we'll definitely, they'll work with PIO and try to do some more pushes on that. So that is all we have for this budget workshop. We're happy to take any comments or concerns you may have, and as we start this process.
I said a while back, and I'll say it again, I just think that it's important for the city to utilize some of this ARP money to pay for the backfill of employees that have been out, employees that have been out with COVID. I know if you think about it, I was talking to Chief the other day, and you have 8 24-hour employees that you have to backfill. That's a tremendous amount of money, and I think the ARP money would be a good way to to make sure that the city's budget don't get out of whack because of COVID backfill. And then Brenda, if you don't mind, would you please send out an updated cell phone list? Thank you. Yeah, for whoever. I don't care if it's everybody or not, but at least the department heads and maybe the frontline supervisors or something, or you send the whole thing out. It might be easier.
I couldn't find you yesterday, Marvin. I didn't have your cell phone number.
I I still don't have his cell phone.
Yes, I have to call.
Alderman, I called you 199 times.
Get it from Alderman McKenzie. He's got none. I'll apologize. I could have sent it out.
A motion to adjourn, do you want?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
Jamie made. I just made it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Motion second to adjourn, any discussion, all in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed say we are adjourned.